In a quiet village, a young boy holds a simple stick like a royal scepter, declaring his destiny to the world. He is a wizard. His friend, a little girl, immediately gets in on the game, roaring that she's a monster who eats wizards for breakfast. The boy narrows his eyes, his playful game suddenly feeling very, very real. With a focused swing, he brings the stick down right on her head with a solid thwack. She recoils in shock, protesting that he actually hit her, whining that monsters are always supposed to lose to wizards. Suddenly, deciding winning is better, she declares she wants to be a wizard too, an idea the boy instantly shoots down as an old man watches their bickering with a quiet chuckle. The elder, Grandpa Rabus, approaches with two other villagers, remarking on how energetic the little ones are. Seizing his chance, the boy asks the question burning in his heart: what does he have to do to become a real wizard? The elder's smile fades as he explains that wizards are the very apex of humanity, nobles who inherited their power through ancient bloodlines. He crushes their dreams with a simple, unfortunate truth, telling them they can't become wizards. As another villager looks on, chiding the old man for his brutal honesty. But the man's expression turns serious as he asks the elder if the rumors are true. Has heard a monster has appeared, and he needs to know what's going on. With a heavy look, Grandpa Rabus confirms their worst fears. The villager recounts the horrifying tale of a shadowy leopard, as large as a house, seen at the village entrance. Elsewhere, a mother holds her daughter close, telling her not to worry. The village chief, she explains, has already gone to the city to request a wizard to subjugate the beast. But until that help arrives, she sternly warns her child to stay away from the forest. The elder reinforces the grim reality. For ordinary people, killing a monster without a wizard is nearly impossible. The villager asks if everyone has been told about the creature lurking nearby. But then he asks about one person in particular, leaving the elder to wonder who he could possibly mean. The person they're talking about lives far from the village, on the idyllic Hisaril Hill. He's a simple shepherd, a young man named Turan. And right now, he is completely, utterly, mind-numbingly bored. Lying amongst his flock, he can only think about how tedious his life has become. It's always the same grassy scenery, the same quiet day, repeating over and over again. He sighs, worrying that at this rate, he's going to forget how to even talk. But a sharp voice suddenly cuts through the silence, calling him a pathetic brat. An old man stands over him, scolding him for slacking off when the sun is still high. Turan barely opens his eyes, telling the elder to move for blocking the sun, earning a grimace at his complete lack of manners. Turan smirks, asking if the old man's anger is really about him slacking off, or about that little incident from the past. The elder flinches, and Turan twists the knife, reminding him of when he tried to claim the sheep after his mother died. He sits up, his voice cold, stating that he's not generous enough to share his inheritance. The old man fumes at the disrespect, but Turan just tells him to say whatever he came to say and get lost. But the elder's next words finally cut through his lazy indifference. He gravely announces that a monster has appeared, causing Turan to jolt upright. He explains it's a leopard, massive as a house, and it was spotted nearby. The old man is stunned by Turan's lack of fear, pointing out that his flock makes him the most obvious target. He gives up, simply warning him that the village chief has gone to the city to hire a wizard. Finally, the old shepherd admits he only came because he was worried, and Turan quietly notes how dishonest the old man is. Turan cuts him off, asking why he can't just admit he's worried about the sheep, not him. With a cruel smirk, he tells the old man to get lost if he's done talking. He adds one final insult, claiming the old man's breath is about to make his nose rot. Finally defeated, the old shepherd turns and trudges away in a huff. With the interruption gone, Turan's mind drifts back to the real issue at hand: monsters. They are beasts wielding mysterious power, the animal kingdom's equivalent to human wizards. And now, one of those wizards is coming to this backwater village all because of a single monster. He tempers his expectations. A wizard hired by a poor village chief can't be that impressive. But still, he can't deny the spark of curiosity burning within him. He needs to see one for himself, to truly understand just how strong they are. But his train of thought is suddenly derailed by a strange, metallic scent in the air. His eyes narrow with alarm. He knows that smell all too well. It's blood. As the sun begins to set, he abandons his post and follows the scent into the forest. He moves with a grim purpose, his sandals kicking up dust on the quiet path. He's sure of it. The source of the smell was somewhere down this trail. A flicker of unease crosses his face as the coppery odor grows stronger. He comes to a dead stop. His eyes fall upon a horrifying scene just ahead. There, lying slaughtered on the ground, is the village chief and Grandpa Rabus. He clenches his jaw, recalling how the old man told him to be careful, only to get himself killed first. Turan examines the wounds, his mind racing. No ordinary wild animal could do this. The savage, deep gashes could only mean one thing: it has to be the monster. Suddenly, a strange sound from behind snaps him out of his thoughts. A heavy, clawed foot, glowing with an ominous light, presses into the dirt. From the shadows, a hulking, rock-skinned beast begins to rise. It looms over him, a terrifying predator straight out of a nightmare, and Turan is frozen in place. His mind flashes back to a simpler time, a young boy asking just how strong these monsters really are. A kind villager explained then that they were insanely powerful. An ordinary man would be torn to shreds. The boy had looked down, worried about what would happen to their village. But the man just smiled, telling him not to worry, because the village chief would bring a wizard to save them all. The boy asked with wide, hopeful eyes if the wizard would really win, if he'd punish the monster. The villager smiled, assuring him that of course he would. Wizards are great beings born of magic. He even claimed they could kill a monster with a single word, an idea that now echoes in the present. Back in the forest, Turan's face is set with grim determination, recalling that old lesson. He channels his will, uttering that one powerful command: die. And for a split second, the beast actually seems to flinch under the weight of his words. But the effect vanishes instantly, a red aura flaring around Turan as his power fails to connect. Hez stunned, touching his throat in disbelief. It's not working? The monster, completely unfazed, barrels towards him in a terrifying, earth-shaking charge. With no other options, Turan screams out a desperate new command: stop! And incredibly, the monster's charge grinds to a halt, carving deep furrows into the earth. Turan watches, stunned. He knew killing it was a long shot, but why can't he even stop it completely? The beast's eyes flare with malevolent energy, a low growl signaling its defiance. Its raw power shatters the command, sending Turan stumbling back, completely outmatched. But as he regains his footing, a new resolve settles on his face. If that's the case, he calmly reaches into his pouch, his fingers closing around a small, ordinary rock. It's time to stop trying to be a wizard. A shepherd should do what a shepherd does. As the monster breaks free and thunders towards him again, Turan winds up his arm. He pours his will not into the beast, but into the stone itself, with a single command: harden. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he launches the supercharged rock like a cannonball. His eyes flare with golden light, his entire will focused on this single, desperate shot. He whips his sling, and a new command thunders in his mind: become faster. Planting his foot, he puts the full force of his body into the throw. And as he releases, a final lethal order is given: pierce through. The small stone transforms into a streak of pure, destructive energy. It screams through the air. A glowing blue bullet aims straight for the beast's heart. The projectile slams into the monster's chest with an earth-shattering impact. A spray of blood and shattered rock explodes from the wound. The supercharged stone tears through its tough hide like it was paper, and it punches clean through the other side, leaving a gaping, cauterized hole. The colossal beast, mortally wounded, begins its slow, heavy fall backwards. But a confident smirk spreads across Turan's face. He wasn't done yet. As the monster collapses, a second, smaller projectile screams through the air. He was aiming for the head all along, and his shot finds its mark perfectly. The enchanted stone smashes into the creature's skull with devastating force. Turan calmly watches the aftermath, his expression unreadable. He muses to himself that this is the first time he's used this power on a real monster. Now, what to do with the corpse? Maybe just dump it in a valley somewhere. With a grimace, he wipes a bit of blood from his cheek. He scoffs, annoyed that those villagers forced him to put in all this effort. He looks back on it all and accepts a simple truth: he is a wizard. The realization first dawned on him 8 years ago. He was only 10 years old, discovering a power that let him move objects with his mind. With childish glee, he turned to share his incredible secret. He called for his mother, who stood frozen, watching the spectacle unfold. He proudly demonstrated his control over the elements, a boy eager for praise. But her reaction was pure terror, screaming at him to stop immediately. Utterly confused, he watched as she grabbed one of the levitating logs out of the air. She knelt down before him, her voice grave, asking for a serious talk. Then she posed a heavy question, asking if he truly wanted to live with her for a long time. She made him promise, right then and there, to never use this power again. More importantly, he could never, ever, let other people see what he could do. The boy was confused, asking why his amazing gift was something to be hidden. His mother reminded him of an old story she used to tell, one about nobles and knights. She explained that while both are called wizards, nobles are pure-blooded descendants of divine beings. Knights, on the other hand, are of a mixed, lesser bloodline. Now, she was ready to tell him the real reason he couldn't use his power. Turan had inherited the abilities of his father, who was a knight. She warned him that cruel nobles rule the world outside their town, treating knights as nothing more than slaves. With a desperate look, she begged him to promise her, and for 8 years, he kept that secret. For years, Turan has upheld the promise he made to his mother, a promise he has no intention of ever breaking. He has no desire to reveal his power as a wizard, or to ever descend from his quiet home on the mountain. But that peace is suddenly shattered by a loud banging. Someone is pounding on his door, desperately shouting his name. Turan opens it, looking more annoyed than concerned. A group of stern-faced villagers is waiting for him. He can't even be bothered to stifle a yawn in their faces. And then comes the accusation. They believe he's the one who killed Rabus. One of the villagers grabs Turan by the collar, his face twisted with rage. He accuses Turan of hurting the old man and leaving him for the monsters. Turan, however, doesn't even flinch, looking utterly unimpressed by the manhandling. He finally speaks, a cold realization dawning on him as he looks at the group. He deduces their pathetic motive aloud. The village's elder died while its young men were too afraid to fight. And now, he smirks, they need a scapegoat to cover their own cowardice. His words hit their mark, and the lead villager absolutely loses it, screaming his name. He throws a wild punch, connecting squarely with Turan's face. But as Turan falls, a single thought crosses his mind. Magic is convenient, he thinks, as he delivers a brutal, blood-splattering counter from the ground. His power is simple. If he wishes for something, mana makes it real. And looking at these charging fools, his wish is pathetically simple. Just fall over. Immediately, one of them trips on thin air, face planting hard into the grass. No fireballs needed. A swift kick sends another sprawling. He just needs to be a little bit better than them. He subtly reinforces a simple stick, just enough so no one notices the magic. The weapon cracks across a villager's skull with brutal force, calibrated perfectly to hurt, but not to kill. Has not here to fight them, has here to utterly dominate them. He moves through their pathetic swings, a whirlwind of calculated, overwhelming force. Their wooden clubs shatter against his body, unable to land even a single meaningful blow. The leader lies broken on the ground, a scene that has repeated itself for 8 long years. He stands over the fallen villagers, the secret of his wizardry safely kept for another day. Turan scoffs, thinking they should have saved this energy for Grandpa Rabu's funeral. A couple of village girls suddenly appear, not to fight, but because they came to see him. He's not in the mood for admirers, his patience already worn completely thin. Turning his back, he tells them to drag these idiots away as he retreats into his home. Inside, he knows this little incident is just going to stir up more trouble in town. They'll use it as an excuse to cheat him at the market, but he's already got a plan. If they won't give him a fair deal, hell, just beat them until they do. But just as he's settling in, a loud, insistent banging erupts from his front door. He can't believe it, they're back for more already? These people must be insane. Furious, Turan swings the door open, ready to unleash hell on whoever dared to bother him again. But standing before him isn't a villager, it's a large, well-equipped traveler who radiates strength. The man apologizes, noting he seems to have arrived at an inconvenient moment. Turan is caught completely off guard. A traveler? Out here? The stranger explains he was just hoping for a favor, but he heard the recent commotion. Forcing himself to be polite feels strange. He hasn't been nice to anyone in this town for years, but his mind is racing. A swordsman in this sleepy village is far from a coincidence. He puts on a friendly face, starting to give the man directions to the local inn, but he pauses, a thoughtful sigh escaping his lips as he reconsiders the situation. Making a decision, he simply invites the mysterious man to come inside. Despite his suspicions, Turan lays out a humble meal for his unexpected guest. The traveler is overjoyed, calling the simple spread a feast despite Turan's apologies for not having much. But he's curious, asking if Turan has really never met anyone from outside the town before. Turan explains he was born on this hill, living his whole life as a shepherd in a place tourists rarely visit. The traveler listens intently, his gaze sharp and calculating. Turan takes a drink, trying to appear calm under the man's scrutiny. Finally, the traveler remarks that this whole situation is interesting. He points out that for a simple shepherd, Turan is surprisingly well versed in manners. Turan's face falls slightly. He learned them from his mother, but she passed away from an illness years ago. The traveler offers his condolences, saying she raised a proud son and surely rests in a heavenly palace. Turan humbly deflects, saying he's just living by his mother's teachings. Changing the subject, he asks what business could possibly bring the traveler to this remote town. The man explains he's here on a favor to hunt down a monster puma, and then, he casually reveals his profession. He is a wizard. Turan's eyes widen in understanding. This must be the wizard the village elder was talking about. The traveler confirms it's him, but now it's his turn to ask a question. He looks around the small cabin, noting that he can sense a monster nearby, but can't see one. His gaze sharpens on Turan, finding it odd that the boy knows everything yet isn't running away. After all, if a monster were to attack a human, a lone shepherd would be its first target. The traveler's voice drops, remarking that Turan is awfully brave for a kid who's never left town. The wizard's gaze hardens, his question cutting through the silence. Just who is this boy? But his question triggers a memory, a warning from Turan's mother long ago about the secret he carries. As a child, he couldn't understand why being a wizard was so dangerous, questioning her about the bad nobles. She explained that to nobles, common folk are like livestock, and knights are merely their well-trained dogs. They might be treated like family for a time, but they can be sold off or sacrificed without a second thought. She looked him in the eyes, asking if he wanted to stay with her, and his answer was a desperate, childish yes. Then came the most important lesson of his life. Nobody could ever know he was a wizard, especially other wizards, who would see him not as a peer, but as a tool to be used and discarded. Her voice echoes in his mind, a grim warning that to protect this secret, he might have to kill. And looking at the wizard before him, Turan's resolve solidifies. If it comes down to it, he will. Turan's mind is racing, his expression grim. So this is what it's come to. The traveler's gaze narrows, pressing him for an answer to his dangerous question. But then, the intense man breaks into a wide, disarming grin, saying Turan's serious face is ruining his joke. Turan can only blink back in confusion. A joke? He was moments away from a life-or-death fight. The man stands up, apologizing for flustering him, but Turan just mumbles that he doesn't have a sense of humor. Kiorn admits he couldn't help himself. Turan's reaction was just too entertaining to pass up. He extends a hand, suggesting they've gotten ahead of themselves and should properly introduce each other. The man gives his name. Kiorn, just a simple wanderer. Turan accepts the handshake, the tension finally breaking as he apologizes for his own standoffishness. He gives his name as Turan, a shepherd, carefully keeping his true identity buried. Over a simple meal, they exchange pleasantries, Turan sharing that Hez 18, while Kiorn reveals Hez 75. Turan can't hide his surprise, prompting Kiorn to explain that wizards simply age far more slowly than ordinary people. Curious, Turan asks how a wizard ended up a wanderer, and Kiorn tells him he left after serving the Arabian family for 60 years. He just wanted to roam freely in his later years, a goal that Turan finds surprisingly romantic. For the first time in a long while, Turan feels himself genuinely relax, sharing a harmless conversation with a man who seems to be a genuinely good person. He'd almost forgotten how enjoyable something this simple could be. They talk through the entire night, only realizing how much time has passed when the morning sun peeks through the window. Kiorn stands, admitting he hadn't even noticed the sunrise and figures it's time for him to leave. As a parting gesture, he leaves a coin on the table, a pure Arabian silver, more than enough to cover the meal. Turan graciously accepts the payment, wishing the old wizard a successful hunt. But Kiorn just laughs, telling him not to act so final, he might just come back to mooch again. Later, out in the sun-drenched fields, Turan returns to his quiet life as a shepherd. His flock grazes peacefully in the vast open pasture. With a faint smile and a single word, he issues a command. The sheep instantly perk up, their attention snapping towards their master. He calmly gathers his flock, his mind still lingering on his recent guest. It wasn't just that Head met another wizard. He wondered how long it had been since he'd had a conversation that comfortable. Petting one of the animals, he reflects on the ease and humor that Kiorn carried so naturally. He remembers the man returning with a fresh hunt, and a simple thought settles in his heart. Kiorn really was a good person. Turan reflects that he always thought of knights as nothing more than hunting dogs for arrogant nobles. But meeting Kiorn has complicated that view. Now, he just needs to figure out how to break the news. That there are no more monsters left on Hisaril Hill. He heads off to find the man. Unbeknownst to him, Kiorn is already there, and a deep sense of unease washes over him. He can see the scars of a fierce battle etched into the land, yet feels no lingering monster presence. Had someone else already hunted the creature he was sent to kill? Then he finds the beast's corpse, and a glowing stone embedded in its skull leaves him stunned. A small smile of relief crosses his face. It doesn't matter who did it, the important thing is that the people are safe. But just as he lets his guard down, a sudden feeling of danger prickles his skin. He whips around, eyes wide with alarm, sensing he is no longer alone. From the ground, a dark, spectral claw bursts forth, dripping with malevolent energy. The dead monster's lingering hatred coalesces into a horrifying, mangled form. It's a monster's wraith, and it looms over Kiorn with pure, murderous intent. He's utterly baffled who in their right mind would intentionally create something like this. The wraith lunges with blinding speed, its shadowy claws aiming to tear him apart. But Kiorn is faster, dodging the blow which shatters the earth where he just stood. He knows exactly what this is. The result of not absorbing a monster's mana after its death. With a single, decisive strike, he purges the spectral energy, dispersing the wraith for good. The one who killed this beast was a wizard, so why would they leave it to turn into this? He dismisses the idea of a novice, as a newcomer couldn't have killed the original monster in the first place. He considers the possibility that this was all intentional, a deliberate trap. But regardless of the motive, he knows one thing: he must destroy it. With a roar, he unleashes a torrent of pure, concentrated light magic. The blast strikes something in the darkness, but it just fizzles out. His magic was nullified? Hez in disbelief. Is the enemy's mana really stronger than his own? Worse yet, the presence he was targeting has completely vanished. He's on high alert, frantically searching. Is it trying to counter his magic with its own? Then, a dark, viscous shadow begins to pool and bubble from the earth right behind him. An enormous, draconic beast of pure darkness erupts from the ground, towering over him. The monster lunges, and Kiorn braces himself, glowing with power to meet the overwhelming assault. Barely holding on, Kiorn realizes this isn't a fight for a mere knight. Any ordinary warrior would have been torn apart in an instant. He can't believe he's found a monster wraith of this caliber in such a backwater village. Staring up at the colossal beast, he feels his journey is about to end. But as he pants on the ground, a grim smile spreads across his face. Hez not going down without a fight. If he dies, Hez taking this thing with him. He begins to pour every last ounce of his mana into his hand, a final gamble. The shadow dragon lunges, seeing its chance to finish him off. Kiorn's arm becomes a blazing sun, a focused point of immense destructive power. He rockets forward, a golden comet aimed straight for the heart of the darkness. But just before his attack can connect, a tiny blue light zips past him. It slams into the shadow dragon, erupting in an impossibly massive explosion. Kiorn can only watch, completely stunned as his own final attack fizzles out. The colossal beast he was willing to die to defeat is utterly vaporized in an instant. A calm voice cuts through his shock, asking if he's all right. He looks up to see the young shepherd, Turan, already walking away as if nothing happened. Kiorn calls out his name, forcing the boy to stop in his tracks. The realization finally hits him. This kid wasn't just a shepherd, he was a wizard. Stunned, Kiorn demands to know why he never said anything. But he quickly changes the question, asking why Turan helped him when he could have just let him die. Turan's gaze is sharp as he finally begins to answer. The scene shifts. They're now inside, a massive wolf pelt resting on the floor. Kiorn presses him, demanding to know why he's going to such lengths for this village. With his level of skill, he points out, Turan could be living a life of luxury anywhere else. Turan's answer is simple and direct. He thinks these people are pitiful. Kiorn scoffs, reminding him that their struggles on the dangerous frontier aren't his responsibility. But Turan's conviction is unshakable. Wizards wield the power of gods, and should protect the powerless. A small, knowing smile crosses Kiorn's face. He admits that not every wizard shares that noble view. Turan agrees that everyone has their own path, his expression softening as a memory surfaces. The past flashes back a scene of pure chaos as a monster decimates a group of warriors. A younger, more desperate Kiorn screams for Turan to listen. This foe is on another level. This is a monster meant for nobles, and he orders Turan to run and get the village to evacuate. With grim resolve, Kiorn turns to face the colossal wraith, declaring he'll hold it off here. But it's just bravado. Deep down, he knows he's hopelessly outmatched and can't last long. Just then, a calm voice from behind tells him it's okay, stopping the veteran in his tracks. Turan casually mentions that if his last attack actually landed, they'll be fine. The implication hits Kiorn like a thunderclap. Was that not even his full strength? He starts to realize this young man isn't just some kid he met by chance in a backwater village. As stones begin to float and glow with an intense blue aura, Kiorn sees this isn't just reckless bravado. The scene unfolding before his eyes is the awakening of a truly terrifying power. Kiorn realizes he might be witnessing the birth of a wizard who could reshape the entire world. The air itself seems to bend as Turan floats, surrounded by an arsenal of glowing stones. He smirks with absolute confidence, admitting to himself that he was also curious about his own limits. But Kiorn, ever the veteran, can't just watch. His hands ignite as he prepares to intervene against the monstrous foe. He roars that they must fight together, but his voice is drowned out before he can even take a step. A colossal pillar of azure energy erupts from the ground, a spell of unimaginable scale. The golden light in Kiorn's hands dies down as a grim realization dawns on him. He's completely outclassed. To join that fight now would be to get in the way. He's no help at all at this level. At that moment, his mission changes from fighting alongside Turan to ensuring this boy's talent can bloom. Yet, as the cataclysmic spell swirls, Turan just points forward with a hint of annoyance, as if this is all a bother. But his attack slams into the spectral beast, doing absolutely nothing. Kiorn screams in disbelief, trying to tell the boy you can't kill a wraith with physical attacks. Unfazed, Turan simply turns and asks how he's supposed to kill it then. Kiorn quickly suggests he should try using fire, or even lightning if he can manage it. Turan tries to conjure a flame, but the spark fizzles out pathetically against the wraith's hide. He just notes that it's not working, completely oblivious to why. But for Kiorn, this is a revelation. The kid doesn't even know the basic principle of causality. A horrifying thought begins to dawn on him as the pieces click into place. He realizes Turan created this wraith by killing the original monster, and has never even properly absorbed mana in his life. Kiorn's mind is racing. This kid isn't just lighting a fire, Hes weaponizing it, and Hes already this strong. Without a moment's hesitation, Turan bursts forward, ready to put the theory to the test. A swirling vortex of raw flame immediately coalesces in the palm of his hand. For any normal wizard, simply making a fire is easy, but controlling it requires years of dedicated training. And yet, Turan is doing it instantly, holding a raging ball of fire as if it were nothing. He plants his foot firmly on the ground, channeling all his focus into the attack. With a powerful slam, he unleashes a torrent of fire that rips across the earth toward the wraith. The inferno strikes true, engulfing the monster's single glowing eye in a blast of heat. An agonizing, silent scream seems to echo as the spectral creature is consumed by the blaze. Kiorn shouts at him to keep his mind focused and keep pouring mana into the attack, or the fire will go out. Kiorn's voice rings out, urging him to burn every last trace of the wraith away. Turan's eyes narrow with fierce determination, pouring everything he has into the attack. With a final, explosive surge, the inferno roars to life, completely obliterating the creature. Kiorn looks on, a slow breath of relief escaping his lips. They'd actually won, but the reality of the situation crashes down on him. That was an absurdly powerful wraith, a monster that should have required at least a noble-class mage to even stand a chance against. And yet, this simple shepherd from the mountains had done it, standing over the creature's fading remains. Snapping out of his awe, Kiorn quickly tells him to absorb the leftover mana before it attracts another one. Turan asks how, and is told to simply imagine draining the energy into himself. He closes his eyes, focusing his mind, and begins to draw in the lingering power. A tide of raw, green mana begins to surge into his arm. Turan focuses, drawing the lingering energy into the palm of his hand. His eyes gleam as he feels the power for the very first time. It's a torrent, an electric current of pure magic coursing through his entire being. His eyes snap open, a jolt of pure ecstasy and shock hitting him all at once. He can hardly believe the sensation, clenching his fist as Kiorn looks on, utterly dumbfounded. Turan confirms the Wanderer's unspoken question. Yes, this was his first time ever absorbing mana, and Kiorn's mind begins to spin. Mana is supposed to grow slowly, bit by bit over years. But this kid just handled a noble-class wraith's energy like it was nothing, revealing a terrifying level of innate potential. The Wanderer stares, a look of pure disbelief on his face, realizing this shepherd is no ordinary man. Having witnessed Turan's immense power, Kiorn addresses him with a newfound respect. He admits his own rudeness and asks which noble house Turan hails from, convinced he's royalty. But Turan simply calls his name, interrupting the formal apology. He points out the blood still dripping from Kiorn's hand, a quiet suggestion to get his priorities straight. Back at Turan's home, the Wanderer has patched himself up, his demeanor completely changed. He formally bows, apologizing for making someone so esteemed perform such a menial task. Turan just sighs, insisting again that he's no one special, just a shepherd who never knew his father. He tells Kiorn to cut it out, his sharp glare making the flustered Wanderer immediately back down. Still, Kiorn can't help but wonder aloud why a wizard of his caliber would live such a simple life. The answer is simple and heavy. It was his mother's request, a promise he made as she was dying. She had warned him that nobles would only use a wizard's power and then throw him away. Turan is taken aback, admitting he always just saw it as overprotective parenting, but Kiorn shakes his head, explaining that his mother wasn't entirely wrong to be so cautious. With great power, he says, inevitably comes great conflict, and he remembers a war from just over 20 years ago. It was a brutal conflict between his own house Legion and the great house of Zahar, a war that claimed countless lives. The memories are still raw as he recalls the losses out of 3,000 knights. Nearly a third of them fell. Turan listens intently as the old Wanderer reveals the true weight of that number. Every person he held dear, his friend, his teacher, even his wife and son, were all massacred by House Zahar. He alone survived. That, he explains with a heavy heart, is why Turan's mother was right. A knight's life can vanish far more easily than a commoner's. But he then adds a critical detail. There was one thing she was mistaken about Turan's own aptitude. Kiorn admits, a bit sheepishly, that he's a knight of considerable skill. Yet, Turan effortlessly destroyed a monster's wraith that he himself couldn't even damage. This means Turan's potential isn't just that of a knight, at minimum. He's on the level of a noble. And not just any noble, but at least an upper-tier one. A revelation that shakes the young man. He asks if his mother was lying when she told him his father was a knight. Kiorn explains that these things happen, and because of this potential, it's time for Turan to leave this hill and see the world. The reason is simple. Humanity desperately needs more powerful individuals like him. He pauses, remembering just how little Turan actually knows about magic and lineage. He clarifies that what truly separates a noble from a knight is a bloodline ability, an inherited power from their ancestors. Kiorn then asks if Turan has any such ability, making the boy clench his fist as he thinks of his own strange strength. Turan offers up his only notable skills, a good sense of smell and a knack for throwing stones. Kiorn confirms that skill with thrown weapons is a trait of House Arabian, but a rather common one. He patiently urges the boy to continue, and Turan prepares to explain further. But before he can, Kiorn's entire demeanor shifts, leaving Turan confused by the sudden silence. The wanderer clenches his fist, his face shadowed by a sudden, heavy realization. But it's Turan who speaks, his own expression hardening as he says he might know which noble house he's from. Kiorn's jaw tightens, the air thick with tension as Turan asks him to name it. Standing at the doorway, Kiorn begins to speak of a great and powerful house. A house known by the ominous titles of pursuers, or hunters, feared for their deadly skill. He finally reveals their name, House Zahar, the very same house that once waged a bloody war against House Arabian. The name drops, and Turan is left reeling from the revelation. House Zahar, the word hangs in the air, freezing him in place. His eyes widen as the full weight of that history crashes down on him. He looks over at the old wanderer, his mind racing heads from the same bloodline as the elder's enemies. What is he even supposed to say? Should he apologize for the actions of strangers? But Kiorn breaks the heavy silence, simply calling out his name. He steps forward, placing a firm hand on the boy's shoulder, telling him not to look so worried. After all, Turan himself didn't participate in that war, though the young man still feels a crushing sense of guilt. Kiorn smiles gently, explaining that this is an adult situation, and that washing blood with more blood never ends well. When asked if he has any regrets, the old warrior's gaze is steady, as he calmly questions regrets about what. Kiorn continues, clarifying he's talking about his advice for Turan to go down the hill. He explains that with Turan's raw talent, seeking power would inevitably lead him to the Zahar family. Turan looks confused, but the old warrior simply says that he trusts the boy's character. He trusts the goodness Turan showed when he saved him, even at great personal risk. Perhaps, he muses, if someone like Turan rose high enough, he could prevent another war. Seeing the weight of that thought, Kiorn tells him not to worry about it for now. But Turan interrupts, his mind suddenly made up. A confident smile spreads across his face as he declares his intention to leave the mountain. Kiorn approves of his decision, but tells him he can't leave just yet. Turan agrees, promising to wait until the elder's injuries have healed, a kindness that touches the old man. And so, the elder begins his lesson, explaining that to use magic, one absolutely needs mana. Turan listens intently as Kiorn calls mana the key to omnipotence, though he clarifies it's not a truly all-powerful force. The real question, Turan wonders, is what makes mana suitable for a given magic, and Kiorn is ready to explain. He holds up 3 fingers, stating that magic's difficulty is determined by 3 factors: bloodline, affinity, and causality. The first, he explains, is bloodline, an innate talent often found in nobles who aren't knights. Kiorn gestures to his own bandaged hand, asking Turan if he could heal it with magic, to which the boy can only say no. But for a family like the Revistas from the south, such healing is second nature, a power inherited through their blood. Turan then asks about the second factor, affinity, which Kiorn simplifies as a kind of familiarity. A spark of understanding hits Turan. It's just like how he made a fireball as if he were simply throwing a rock. Kiorn nods, confirming that if Turan had just tried to make flames, he never would have achieved that same speed or power. And finally, Kiorn gets to the third factor, causality, admitting it's so complex that even he doesn't fully understand it. He poses a hypothetical. What if Turan tried to kill him right now, using only raw mana? That, he explains, is the very essence of a lack of causality, as he channels his own energy into a nearby mug. When there's no logical cause for the desired effect, the mana simply boils the water, unable to achieve its grander purpose. Turan listens, the gears in his mind turning, and a flicker of understanding crosses his face. So, to kill Kiorn, he wouldn't just will it. He'd need to create a cause of death, like conjuring and launching a flame. Kiorn erupts with a proud grin, exclaiming that Turan is so sharp he could have easily become a scholar. But the boy's mind is already on the next puzzle. Why can he control ordinary animals, but not magical beasts? From outside the window, their intense lesson continues, a quiet exchange of profound magical theory. Turan mulls it over. True magic isn't just about wielding power, but mastering the principles that govern it. Turan's mind keeps churning, now asking about the special magic of the Zahar bloodline. Kiorn explains their affinity for stealth and tracking, then casually challenges the boy to try it himself. Without a moment's hesitation, Turan agrees and takes his seat to focus. He closes his eyes, pouring his will into a single, clear desire: to be completely undetectable. A soft shimmer of light envelops him as the magic takes hold. Kiorn watches on, wondering if the kid actually managed to pull it off. He looks around the room, and where Turan once sat, only a faint wisp of golden energy remains. The old warrior's face is a mask of pure shock. He admits he can't see the boy at all. His jaw tightens, completely floored by this impossible, instantaneous mastery. The room stands empty for a moment before Turan's form flickers back into existence, the test a resounding success. Turan clenches his fist, the lingering power still palpable as Kiorn reflects on the terrifying ability. The old warrior admits it's an unfairly potent skill, but he warns the boy it isn't invincible. With that, Kiorn offers to teach him proper magic training, but Turan is wary of his intentions. The boy questions why he'd help a mage from an enemy family, but Turan has a simple answer. He states that Kiorn saved him, and more importantly, he trusts the boy's character. The scene shifts, and the village chief is in an uproar, demanding to know why Turan is leaving. Standing tall with his pack, Turan faces the angry mob, who feels betrayed by his sudden decision, but he just scoffs, asking what right they have to dictate what he does with his own property. He gives them an ultimatum: buy his sheep at a fair price, or he'll simply set them all free. The villagers are stunned, as Turan dares them to try and catch the flock themselves. The village chief grits his teeth, realizing this kid absolutely means what he says. There's nothing to gain by pushing him further. So, with a heavy sigh, he hands over the payment, telling Turan he's free to go, and the two travelers turn their backs on the village for good. As they walk, Turan cheekily brings up the compensation the villagers still owe Kiorn, asking if he should pop back to collect it. But Kiorn waves it off, admitting he never intended to take their money anyway, since Turan was the one who handled the beast. Turan just grins, accepting the answer as they move on to the next chapter. They soon arrive at a fork in the road, where Kiorn announces that this is where their paths must diverge. He apologizes for not traveling with him further, explaining that he's simply more comfortable moving alone. But Turan isn't offended in the slightest, instead giving a heartfelt thank you for all the guidance and help. Kiorn smiles warmly, wishing his young student well on his journey ahead. And with a final, hopeful smile, Turan expresses his wish that they'll meet again someday under happier circumstances. Turan watches silently as Kiorn's figure shrinks into the distance, and in that moment of solitude, a quiet realization begins to dawn on him. While his mother had given him affection, he'd always secretly yearned for a father. Kiorn had unknowingly filled that role, becoming the kind of man he aspired to be. With his mentor gone, Turan steps out into the vast, unforgiving wilderness alone. His journey takes him through desolate canyons, the wind whipping around him. He pulls his hood tighter, shielding his face from the harsh, swirling dust. But then, his sharp eyes catch a flicker of movement on the horizon. In the distance, he spots a small group of figures, perhaps traveling merchants. A good sign. He picks up his pace, a new purpose in his stride. He approaches the cloaked figures, thinking to simply ask for directions. Their leader, a grizzled man with an eye patch, demands to know who he is before Turan can even speak. Turan explains he's a lone traveler and is told the nearest city is Mure, just down the road. Thanking them for the information, he turns to continue his journey. But a voice cuts through the air, telling him to wait. One of the younger men steps up, asking if he really thinks he can just leave after getting what he wanted. Turan is confused for a moment, until the man spells it out. A price must be paid for the information. Suddenly, swords are drawn all around him, and they demand he hand over his bag. So that's what this is, bandits. The man behind him sneers, confirming his realization. Their leader just grins, saying this is a wasteland where a dead body wouldn't look out of place. The bandit leader tells him to hand over his things while they're still being nice. Turan's eyes narrow. So these aren't just thieves, they're killers. His mind flashes back to his conversation with Kiorn. He remembers the man's advice about his fire magic, how it's a gift meant to be used without hesitation, and how Kiorn told him to go forth and experience the world for himself. A wicked grin spreads across Turan's face as he looks at the bandits surrounding him. Perfect. He'll just have to use them for a little practice. The bandit leader lets out a scoff, completely unimpressed. His men erupt in laughter, mocking this kid who thinks he's some kind of wizard. But as they laugh, Turan's hand begins to glow with a faint, green energy. With a single word, a violent gale erupts, sending the bandits flying and screaming. He realizes he can simply shape the wind with his hands, a far more mana-efficient method. The once cocky bandits are left groveling in the dust, wondering what in the world just hit them. But Turan isn't done. He casually pulls out a water bottle for his next experiment. With a mere gesture, he crystallizes the water into a razor-sharp shard of ice. Several more shards materialize, hovering around him like deadly, silent projectiles. The mockery on one bandit's face melts into pure, unadulterated terror. An ice shard tears through the man's arm, a brutal and efficient display of power. Turan calmly assesses the spell, thinking that throwing stones still feels faster and stronger. The bandit leader immediately drops to his knees, desperately begging the wizard to spare them. They grovel and plead, promising to give him anything he wants if he just spares them. But Turan has heard enough. He plants his foot firmly on the ground. In an instant, massive pillars of rock erupt from beneath, impaling the bandits without mercy. The leader can only stare in disbelief, his mind refusing to accept what just happened. He looks up at Turan, who now stands surrounded by the grisly remains of his men. With only one survivor left, Turan has a simple question for the trembling bandit leader. He asks why they attacked so recklessly, not even considering a lone traveler could be a wizard. The answer, however, seems to genuinely surprise him. The leader confesses it was because Turan bowed his head. His politeness made them think he was weak. A cold realization dawns on Turan. He thanks the man for teaching him a very useful lesson. The bandit leader desperately asks if this means he'll be spared, a sliver of foolish hope in his eyes. But Turan's response isn't words. It's a single coalescing drop of water magic and a sudden memory. He recalls the wanderer Kiorn, who gave him a crucial piece of advice before they parted ways. Kiorn's words were simple and grim. Never show mercy to scum like bandits. The kind of people who prey on others for their own gain don't deserve pity. Because sparing one life out of misplaced kindness could lead to 10 good people dying later. With that lesson echoing in his mind, Turan's face hardens. Hez stalled long enough. He turns and walks away, leaving the bandit's corpse to the desert sands. The wheel tracks of the cart they used cut a clear path forward, but his mind is elsewhere. As he journeys on, a single, heavy thought finally lands. He had just killed people. He felt a pang of guilt, but he knew he couldn't have let them go. Kiorn's warning echoed in his mind. Men who kill for profit will always do so again. With that grim lesson, his chaotic heart finally settled, and he took a steady step forward. After a long and arduous journey, he finally arrived at the edge of a new world. A look of pure astonishment spread across his face. In the distance, spread out before him, was the small city of Murray. He stepped inside, immediately swallowed by the sheer number of people. It was the first time in his life he'd ever seen such a massive crowd. Even the architecture was on a scale completely different from his simple village. As he walked through the bustling streets, he realized this was what a real city felt like. His first stop is a fruit stand, where he tries to get the vendor's attention. He quickly clarifies that he's not a customer, just hoping for a bit of help. He remembers Kiorn's parting advice. In any new place, the first thing to find is an inn. But the vendor's face sours instantly, telling him to scram if he's not buying anything. Turan is genuinely confused. Is he supposed to buy fruit just to ask a question? Deciding to play along, he points to a piece of fruit and asks how much it costs. The price is 2 dupit, a currency he's never heard of, but the vendor says other coins will do. With the transaction complete, he finally asks for directions to the inn. The vendor, now much friendlier, points him toward the biggest inn in the city. Stepping inside, he's immediately greeted by a cheerful staff member named Lena. Trying to be charming, Turan asks for the price of a room for the night. Lena gives him a bright smile, quoting him a price of 16 dupit, which he readily agrees to. But before anything else, he slides a pouch of coins her way, explaining he has a more important question. He cuts right to the chase. Are there any monsters with bounties on them nearby? It's a 2-for-1 deal for him. He needs to absorb mana, and he remembers Kiorn's advice about earning cash. Lena pauses for a moment, an intrigued, almost mischievous grin forming on her face. She leads him away from the counter, explaining that valuable information isn't free. But Turan is completely lost when she mentions something about the city hall. Now sitting down with a drink, he has to ask the painfully simple question, "What's that?" Lena leans in, absolutely floored. She can't help but tease him, realizing he's a true country boy. Patiently, she explains that City Hall is where officials handle public business for the Lord. Since it's already dark, she tells him to go tomorrow to find any monster bounties. Her curiosity piqued. She asks if he's a monster hunter, but Turan asks what that even is. She explains the local legend, that an ordinary person can become a wizard if they hunt monsters. Just as she starts to wave it off as a foolish superstition, a booming voice cuts her off. A burly man appears behind Turan, declaring it's no myth, he's seen it with his own eyes. Lena shouts his name in disbelief, but Midan just grins, vowing not to die until he's a wizard. He gives Turan a rough pat on the head, excusing his sudden intrusion. But Turan isn't bothered in the slightest. He's completely captivated, asking for more details. Lena leans back, piecing it together herself. If wizards get stronger from monsters, it must work for normal people too. Midan proudly introduces his crew, explaining that the four of them are hunting monsters to become wizards. Turan's eyes widen with curiosity. If that's their goal, does that mean one of them is already a wizard? Midan scoffs at the idea, admitting there are only 4 wizards in the whole city, all serving the Lord. He then turns the tables, eyeing Turan's simple clothes and asking how he hunts monsters with such shabby gear. In response, Turan simply pulls out his weapon, a well-worn leather sling. Midan examines it, noting it looks perfect for taking down small, fast-moving prey like rabbit or fox monsters. Seeing an opportunity, he casually mentions they were just looking for another shooter, and offers Turan a spot on their team. Turan quietly considers the proposal, but something about Midan's eager, almost predatory grin seems off. Later that night, back in his room, Turan lies in bed, having politely declined the offer. There's no reason to tie himself to them. He sighs, exhausted by the chaotic day, his gaze drifting to his pack. The reality finally hits him. He's truly left his village behind. He stares at his hand, raw magic crackling around his fingers as he wonders what the future holds. But his thoughts are cut short by a sudden knock at the door. Turan instantly sits up, his instincts screaming. Who could possibly be visiting him now? His mind flashes back to the wanderer Kiorn's recent advice. The older man had warned him that a city isn't automatically a safe place. A lesson Turan took to heart. Never, ever, let your guard down. Back in the present, he approaches the door, a sphere of protective magic already forming in his hand. Taking a deep breath, he cautiously cracks the door open, ready for an ambush. His eyes widen, all the tension draining away in an instant. It's just Lena, the inn girl, smiling warmly and asking if she disturbed his sleep. She claims she saw his room was cold and came to keep him warm, leaving Turan utterly baffled. With a sly smile, she leans in, cheekily asking what he thinks she could possibly mean by that. He just stares back, repeating her words, his mind clearly not on the same page. She clarifies her offer. For a small price, she'll do whatever he desires. He just asks what if he desires nothing. She moves in close, grabbing his shirt, confidently telling him not to lie. She can see it on his face. But instead of desire, Turan has achieved a state of pure, enlightened detachment. Her seductive facade crumbles in the face of his absolute indifference. Suddenly, Kiorn's voice screams through his memory, a frantic warning not to do it. The flashback continues, with his past self calmly lecturing on the dangers of inn maids. Even with a warrior's resistance to disease, he had once warned, desire can still trap you in regret. As Lena trudges away in defeat, Turan reflects on the harsh realities of city life. Lying in bed, he can't shake the feeling that this place is cold and heartless, where even a simple conversation has a price. But in the next room, Midan's companions have a question for their boss. One of them asks why he even bothered trying to recruit that kid from earlier, doubting he'd be any help. Midan chuckles, admitting he thought the boy's cocky mouth would at least make him good monster bait. But then his tone shifts, revealing the real reason. The kid reminds him of his younger self. He confesses that hearing about a rookie hunting with a pathetic stick worried him, and he just wanted to keep the boy alive a little longer. Turan, listening through the thin walls, can't suppress a small, knowing smile. Staring at the ceiling, his entire perspective begins to change. Maybe this city isn't so cold after all. The next morning, a new day begins at the local Monster Hunter Guild. A guild clerk politely greets the newcomer at his desk, but upon seeing Turan, he seems a bit confused, asking if he's some kind of official. Turan simply states that he's here to hunt monsters, a declaration that catches the clerk off guard. He can't help but remember Kiorn's warning that the world wouldn't exactly roll out the red carpet for him. The Wanderer had explained that there's no reason for the world to be kind on its own. If he wanted respect, Kiorn advised, all he had to do was reveal he was a wizard, and people would bow. Back in the present, the clerk slides a monster request form across the desk, but with a condition. He tells Turan to look at it and hand it right back, clearly not trusting him to take it. Turan studies the crude drawing of a bird-like creature, getting a sarcastic reply from the clerk. The clerk then gives him a final, crucial warning. Bring back any corpses, because without a wizard to disperse the mana, they become wraiths. But Turan calmly states that he knows the law about abandoning monster corpses. Has seen firsthand what happens when a monster becomes a wraith, a mistake he won't repeat. The clerk scoffs, asking if Turan really thinks knights waste their time on such things. Tapping the request form, he explains that a knight's job is to maintain order inside the city. Hunting monsters outside the walls, he sneers, is a job for thugs like him, and Turan simply walks away. The clerk watches him go, already writing him off as just another corpse waiting to happen. But out in the wilderness, the target monster barely has time to open its menacing eye. Before it slammed to the ground, a gaping hole blasted through its chest. A sudden thud makes the guild clerk jump, his jaw dropping in disbelief. He and the other staff stare at the fresh kill, wondering how on earth he brought it back so fast. The clerk stammers, asking if he truly killed it alone, and Turan's cold confirmation hangs in the air. He's not here for praise, he just wants to know how to collect his bounty, sending the clerk into a panicked rush. A heavy pouch of coins is immediately placed in his hand, with the clerk practically begging him to go rest. Meanwhile, the other staff are in disbelief, marveling at how the valuable blade wings are still perfectly pristine. But the clerk notices the young hunter hasn't moved an inch. He turns to find Turan just standing there, an expectant look on his face. He asks if there are any other monsters in the area that are actually worth hunting. The clerk's mind short-circuits. This kid just finished a major hunt, and has already asking for more? And the result of that monstrous work ethic is a table overflowing with the most expensive food in the inn. Lena serves the feast, her voice filled with awe, announcing he's slain 30 monsters in just 3 days. Lena jokes that he must have made a killing with all that hunting. But Turan looks up from his meal, a serious expression on his face, revealing that money isn't his true goal. His real objective is the mana contained within the monsters he hunts. He can feel it in his own hands. His mana has grown several times stronger since he first met Kiorn. But a frustrating realization dawns on him. He's hitting a limit. Weak monster mana won't be enough to get any stronger. His intense train of thought is broken by Lena, who seems a bit worried by his silence. Midan strolls over, marveling at the empty table, shocked that Turan ate everything all by himself. Hez just impressed, saying a skinny kid like him sure can pack it away, and Hez glad his cooking was enjoyed. Turan stands to leave, genuinely thanking him for the delicious meal. But just as he turns to go, Midan's hand clamps down on his arm, stopping him dead in his tracks. But it seems someone else has taken an interest in him, as a couple of thugs approach with predatory smiles. Their leader leans in, sneering that he's heard the skinny runt has been making good money lately. He suggests a little charity for his partners, but his sentence is cut short by a brutal slap across the face. The man stumbles back in disbelief, his friend staring in shock at the sudden violence. Turan calmly lowers his hand, asking with a cold look if that was the charity he was looking for. The second thug roars, telling him not to get cocky as he winds up for a heavy punch. But Turan's reflexes are just too good, and he stops the fist dead in its tracks without even breaking a sweat. Enraged, the first thug grabs a nearby stool, swinging it like a club, aiming right for Turan's head. With a solid thud, Turan catches the makeshift weapon with one hand, completely halting its momentum. His fingers then clamp onto the man's temple, and the thug's bravado instantly evaporates into pure terror. With a flash of power, Turan sends the thug crashing to the floor, ending the fight instantly. But the commotion draws unwanted attention, as the innkeeper Lena grits her teeth in frustration. She finally snaps, screaming at them not to cause trouble in her establishment. Suddenly, their leader, a mountain of a man named Midan, appears and bows deeply. He stands before Turan, offering a sincere apology and promising it will never happen again. Midan explains his men have been struggling financially and let jealousy get the better of them. He then forces the two shame-faced thugs to stammer out their own pathetic apologies. Turan simply asks if things are really that difficult for them, prompting Midan to explain their work has been limited. Clenching his fist, Midan admits they're about to be kicked out but insists it's their own problem to solve. Unmoved, Turan just holds out a small pouch, casually offering a solution to their troubles. Midan is stunned, asking why Turan would help, but Turan calls it repayment for his earlier kindness. He smirks, reminding the big man that nothing is ever truly free. In exchange for the money, Turan wants information, and Midan's face lights up. That's his specialty. With his business concluded and new intel in hand, Turan prepares to move on from the city. Standing on the outskirts, he decides this will be his last hunt here before he departs. The information Medan gave him about the next city was more than enough to set his path. He recalls their talk, finding the intel surprisingly useful and Medan himself to be a genuinely good person. He's not as worldly or sharp as Kiorn, but his spirit is kinder, purer. But as he reflects, his senses suddenly go on high alert. A strange, familiar smell drifts through the air, instantly catching his attention. He prays his hunch is wrong as he bursts through the forest, a sense of dread pushing him forward. Deep claw marks gouged into a tree confirm his fears a monster has been here. Following the scent of blood, he moves deeper into the unnervingly quiet woods. And there it is, a body, slumped against a tree in a pool of its own blood. His eyes narrow. He recognizes this man. Isn't he one of the thugs from Maiden's group? Turan's mind races, piecing together the grim scene before him. The man's eyes are wide and vacant, a silent testament to a brutal end. Scattered in the gore are a few silver coins, the very payment Turan had given them. Kneeling beside the body, a single question echoes in his mind. What happened to Medan? But with his last, dying breath, the man tries to utter one final, desperate word. The thug forces out a single broken syllable, Ra. With his last ounce of life, he manages to finish the word. Rabbit. A rabbit? Turan glances over to see a fluffy white creature, its mouth stained red. But the man wasn't done, gasping out monster as Turan finally sees the true extent of the carnage. And there it is, the culprit, an adorable little rabbit with hellish red eyes, feasting on the remains. Turan rises, his senses on high alert as he turns to face this unexpected threat. In a flash, the creature launches itself at him, a white and gray blur of pure aggression. Its speed is terrifying. Turan's eyes widen in shock at the sudden attack. He barely dodges, the monster landing precisely where he'd been standing. Without hesitation, Turan throws up a hand, conjuring a swirling shield of wind to defend himself. The wind spell swirls into existence, a defensive vortex ready to be unleashed. Turan launches a cutting blade of air, sending it hurtling towards the rabbit. But the monster is unimpressed, watching the magic simply split and curve around its body. It casually swats the attack aside, shattering the condensed wind with a single paw. A sudden realization hits Turan that technique was for deflecting projectiles, not a living monster. The rabbit digs its claws into the earth, planting its foot with a surge of power. An immense, terrifying shadow looms over Turan as the creature grows to a colossal size. But its furious red eye suddenly widens, a flash of alarm replacing its killing intent. And just like that, the crushing pressure vanishes, leaving only a whisper of wind. The creature turns tail and bolts, fleeing into the forest at an unbelievable speed. But its escape is cut short as a mysterious swordsman descends from the sky. A flash of white hair and steel slice deeply across the monster's face. Before it can even process the pain, a powerful kick connects with its side. The creature is launched like a cannonball, sent flying backwards into the trees. It carves a path of utter destruction straight through the dense forest. The once mighty beast tumbles helplessly, completely overpowered. Its momentum carries it onward, a testament to the sheer force of the attack. A distant crash echoes as a plume of dust and debris rises into the air. It finally slams into the ground, shrieking in a mix of agony and shock. The unstoppable monster is left bleeding and broken in a crater of its own making. The killer rabbit lies twitching in a pool of its own blood, its reign of terror over. A figure emerges from the dust, stepping calmly toward the fallen beast. Turan stands over the creature, not with relief, but with purpose. He reaches out a hand, not to strike, but to claim his prize. A vibrant green aura erupts as he begins siphoning the monster's mana. Hez stunned, the energy flowing into him is immense, far beyond what Hed anticipated. But from the trees, the white-haired swordsman watches, his mind reeling from the sight. He can barely process what he's seen, stammering that Turan is a wizard. Turan calmly confirms it, prompting the swordsman to ask why he would ever hide such a gift. The question hits him like a punch, triggering a memory of a time his power only left him bloodied and surrounded by the dead. A memory of his friend Medan, bloodied and broken, calling out his name. But he pushes that aside, recalling a better time, when Medan told him of a great city called Orum. A city with a massive library, he'd said, containing thousands of books. Medan had smirked, seeing that the mention of books finally got Turan's attention, but he warned him that not just anyone could walk through its doors. The library, apparently, was a place for wizards and wizards alone. And with that, a decision was made, echoing from the past into the present. Standing before 3 fresh graves, Turan declared he was going to that city, to Orum. He spoke to his fallen friend, to Medan, hoping he would be happy there, as Turan walked away to fulfill a new purpose. And so, after a long journey, Turan finally arrives at his destination. He almost feels embarrassed now, thinking back to how impressed he was by the small city of Murray. Because before him stands the great city of Orum, a sprawling metropolis unlike anything he's ever seen. He hadn't expected such a massive line of people just trying to get inside. At the gates, guards stand vigilant, screening everyone who passes. A proper system for a proper city, he thinks, as he calmly waits his turn. But just as he's about to step through, a sharp voice cries out, ordering him to halt. A guard points a finger right at his face, his expression one of pure disgust. With a sneer, the man tells him to get lost. His filthy, dusty clothes aren't welcome here. And in the distance, a magnificent tower pierces the sky, the very library he came for, now seemingly out of reach. But Turan isn't leaving. Hez finally found it, the great library that Midan spoke of. The sheer scale of the place is overwhelming, a structure that surely must have been built with magic. He approaches the grand entrance, where 2 guards stand sentinel, turning as he calls out. Turan politely explains he'd like to enter, but is immediately shut down. This place is for wizards only. Without missing a beat, he calmly replies that he is, in fact, a wizard, catching the guard completely off guard. The man's disbelief quickly twists into rage, accusing him of being a lunatic, impersonating a mage. He scoffs that a scruffy kid could never be a wizard and moves to shove him, but Turan simply raises a hand to stop him. A sudden, intense pulse of crimson mana flares to life in his palm, freezing the guard in his tracks. Turan recalls Kiorn's words, that true wizards can sense each other's power, and even gauge their strength. And the message his mana is sending right now couldn't be clearer. The guard's world is painted crimson as an suffocating aura slams into him. He's thrown back, completely helpless against the sheer magical pressure. His partner rushes to his side as Turan stands there, having barely moved a muscle. Lying on the cold stone, the guard's mind races. This kid isn't just a wizard, he's at least noble class. Scrambling to his feet, he introduces himself as Kenya, a knight of House Valtus, desperately trying to save face. But Turan is unimpressed, asking if he really needs to announce his family name just to get in. Kenya insists that to use the library, he needs direct permission from the master of House Valtus. Back at the inn, Turan lets out a long sigh, having agreed to let the guard handle the request. All he wanted was to read a few books, but of course it wouldn't be that simple. Just then, a maid peeks into his room, a little flustered to see him. She informs him that a bath has been prepared, and to his surprise, they immediately begin washing him. Overwhelmed and confused, Turan sits in a ridiculously lavish bath, wondering how he ended up in this situation. With a sharp glance, he tells them to stop. The maids panic, explaining that they'll be punished if they fail to properly serve an esteemed guest. Seeing he has no choice, Turan reluctantly agrees, as the camera pans out to reveal the grand Valtus estate. Later, after he's been cleaned and dressed, one of the maids is left completely stunned by his appearance. She gasps, quickly covering her mouth in embarrassment for being so obvious. Turan, now looking less like a wanderer and more like a young lord, asks if there's something on his face. The lead maid apologizes profusely, explaining her colleague was just momentarily dazzled by his looks. He just smiles, saying there's nothing to forgive, but asks them to speak more casually. This high-class treatment is still foreign to him. Just then, a new voice cuts through the room, its owner intrigued. A young noblewoman strides forward, flanked by a massive attendant. She sizes Turan up, openly mocking the rumors that he'd arrived looking like a beggar. With a smirk, however, she has to admit that after a little cleaning up, he looks like a prince. He introduces himself simply as Turan, and she returns the gesture, calling herself Azella. When she presses him about his family name, he politely deflects, saying it's difficult to say. Oh? A man of mystery. Azella's interest is piqued by his secrecy. A mischievous grin spreads across her face. If he's hiding something, maybe she'll just have to force it out of him. Without any warning, a massive wave of golden energy erupts from her body, flooding the entire hall. Her eyes glow with power as she issues a silent challenge. Show me what you're really made of. The sheer weight of her mana slams into Turan, a test of will and power. But he's not one to be intimidated. His own energy flares to life, a calm, piercing blue. Golden arrogance collides with an ocean of blue magic, erupting in a silent, violent duel. The shockwave is so intense her attendant has to shield the screaming maids from the blast. And just as quickly as it began, the immense pressure vanishes from the room. Turan stands completely unfazed, letting out a simple breath. He didn't even break a sweat. A single, impressed word escapes Azella's lips. Wow. That surprise quickly morphs into a delighted, almost manic grin. He's the real deal. She calls out to him, her playful challenge now replaced with genuine, sparkling interest. Then, with a sly look, She asks him if he wants to marry her. The room is left in a stunned, awkward silence after her sudden proposal. Turan is just completely blank. He has absolutely no idea how to respond to that. Azella bursts into laughter, trying to play it off as just a little joke to lighten the mood. But with a sly grin, she tells him to seriously consider it, since she's currently single. She turns with her attendant and walks away, leaving him to process the whirlwind encounter. Turan watches her go, the shock on his face slowly hardening into serious contemplation. It wasn't the proposal that bothered him, it was the power he felt during their clash. A strange tingling sensation runs up his arm, the lingering echo of her mana. He looks at his hand, a startling realization dawning on him. Her power is on par with his. His gaze shifts to the family crest on the wall, confirming this girl is from a very powerful lineage. And so, Turan finds himself standing in an opulent office before the Lord of Orum. The man, Valtus, welcomes him with a knowing look, clearly expecting his arrival. Turan states his name and his purpose, confirming he's here to use the famed library. The Lord sighs, launching into a tired speech about how there's no secret magic to be found here. But Turan cuts him off, clarifying he has no interest in such things, and Rug seems to accept this. Hez granted permission but told to return tomorrow, a kindness Turan won't forget. The next day arrives, and he stands before the magnificent ancient Sky Library Tower. The very same guards he humbled before now bow deeply, welcoming him as an esteemed guest. With a soft groan, the grand, glowing doors begin to part, and the sight that greets him leaves our boy completely stunned. He looks up, and up, and up, an endless spiral of shelves and knowledge reaching toward the light. The main hall is just as vast, and for a moment, he just soaks in the sight of the legendary library. A voice suddenly cuts through the silence, and he turns to see who could possibly be here. A young girl, barely a child, cheerfully introduces herself as the one in charge, the librarian. She says that by the Lord's decree, she's here to lay down the ground rules for him. Turan is taken aback. A little kid is the librarian, as she explains the simple policies. Don't damage anything, and don't take books. She then gets uncomfortably close, adding that she'll be watching him the entire time he's here. After gently pushing her back, he asks if she, as the librarian, has actually read all these books. Of course she has. She boasts that she can find anything he wants, running through genres like romance or history. Then, with a sly look, she offers to find him something more adult, leaving Turan completely lost for words. Turan cuts through her teasing, stating he just wants to learn basic common sense about the world. Understanding his true goal, the little librarian snaps into action, pulling together a stack of books. She explains that while most tomes are ancient, this specific section should be exactly what he needs. He picks one up, carefully examining the simple-looking volume. His mind echoes with a simple, profound thought. So, this is what a book is. He opens it, revealing pages filled with intricate writing and mysterious diagrams. As his eyes trace the lines, a slow realization dawns on his face. A genuine, wondrous smile spreads across his lips. It's amazing. And so began his new routine, spending every single day lost in the library's vast knowledge. He learned of the world's geography, its diverse races, and even the complex etiquette of wizards. He devoured tales of ancient monsters and powerful relics from the fallen old empire. With each page turned, the hazy outlines of his world sharpened into focus. But his studies were interrupted by a summons from the Lord of Orum himself, Valtus. The Lord reminded him that access to the library was a significant gesture of goodwill, and now, he was here to collect on that favor. A monster had appeared north of the city, devouring travelers, and even the 4 knights sent to stop it. Valtus admits his house is short on manpower, making the situation even more desperate. Turan agrees without hesitation. Protecting people is what a wizard should do. Yet, a nagging thought surfaces: most wizards wouldn't bother with such matters. The Lord, however, is only focused on the urgency. A critical trade route has been blocked for 10 days. Turan's eyes narrow as it all clicks into place. So that's why the Lord was so generous with the library. The man was already desperate for a wizard before he even arrived in town. And so, a full expedition party assembles at the gates of Orum, ready to march north. At the head of the group is a young woman with pink hair, nonchalantly stretching her gloved hands. She muses aloud that her father must think his own knights are unreliable to call in a guest for a simple monster hunt. It's no offense to Turan, she clarifies. She just thinks her father is making a huge fuss. But a spiky-haired youth in her retinue quickly tells her to drop it, chiding her for being disrespectful. Her playful demeanor instantly vanishes, replaced by a cold, withering glare. Ignoring her completely, the young man turns to Turan and introduces himself with a charming smile as Valtus. With introductions made, The party steps off the paved road and into the wilderness. Azella marches ahead, declaring she just wants to get this over with and go home. Marvin, however, uses the moment to playfully ask Turan if he's interested in his sister. With a smug grin, Marvin expresses his relief at Turan's quick denial. But their chatter is cut short when a sharp command to halt echoes through the woods. The party stops, finding a clearing where a merchant's cart lies in absolute ruin. The knights already on scene assume it's the monster, figuring it must have circled south. Turan, however, remains silent, carefully analyzing the wreckage with a sharp, calculating gaze. His eyes land on a strange clue, a perfect five-fingered handprint burned into the wood. One of the knights, seeing the same evidence, confidently announces their target is a monkey. Azella looks completely lost, but Turan just points, telling her to look closely at the handprint. The captain of the Valtus Knights declares they must pick up the trail and pursue the creature into the forest. But Azella and Marvin just look at each other, admitting they're completely useless with tracking magic. With a sigh, the seasoned captain prepares to search for tracks himself, figuring the kids are no help. But Turan steps forward, calmly stating he's used to this, catching Azella completely off guard. He takes a moment, focusing his mind and mana to cast a search spell. His eye flashes with power as the magic activates. A wisp of brilliant blue energy surges forward, locking onto the monster's trail. Turan simply gestures, telling everyone to follow his lead. The magical trail leads them directly to a riverbank, where it vanishes. The creature washed itself. Azella is stunned. A mere beast, intelligent enough to intentionally erase its own tracks? Turan casually suggests that maybe the beast just wanted to clean itself. But in that same instant, his senses scream, detecting a powerful presence nearby. He spins around, shouting a desperate warning to the others. It's right behind them. Towering over the Valtus family's elite knights is a monstrous, red-eyed gorilla. It rears back, its massive arm poised to deliver a devastating blow. The captain can only scream for his men to dodge, a command they'll never follow. In a flash of brutal violence, the beast's attack tears through the entire squad, a massacre in a single swing. While the so-called experts are annihilated, Turan is already leaping into the fray. He gives a quick, confident look over his shoulder, time to show them how it's done. Marvin, however, is completely paralyzed, splattered with blood and staring with a face of pure horror. Suddenly, a memory flashes in his mind, a scene of blood-soaked survivors from another monster attack. A younger Azella stands frozen, her face a mask of pure shock and horror. And in that moment, Turan understands. His mother's warnings about these creatures, they were all true. Snapping back to reality, Azella screams for her remaining retainers to charge the beast. Her men rush forward, but the gorilla is a force of nature, swatting them aside. But then, instead of fighting, the monster lets out a bizarre cry and bolts into the forest. An eerie, lonely image of a swinging chair flashes by, a clue to its destination. Azella and her men give chase, but the creature is just too fast, and they're quickly losing ground. Just as she prepares to unleash her own magic, a brilliant blue light cuts through the trees. A massive beam erupts from the ground, pinning the screaming monster in place, a spell cast not by her, but by Turan. Azella and Marvin can only stare, completely stunned by the sheer power Turan just displayed. He stands amidst the swirling remnants of his magic, not even breaking a sweat. A small, knowing smirk plays on his lips. That was nothing. The gorilla lies utterly broken on the ground, its rampage brought to an abrupt end. But Azella, furious at being upstaged, decides to deliver the final, unnecessary blow herself. Her hand ignites, channeling the fiery rage of her noble bloodline. A magnificent serpent of pure flame erupts from her palm, rocketing toward the helpless monster. The world turns white as her spell detonates in a massive, fiery explosion. And watching the inferno, Turan finally understands this is the legendary pyromancy of House Valtus. As the flames die down, her retainers let out a collective sigh, thankful it's finally over. With the battle over, Azella turns to Turan, boasting that the monster's attack gave her a bit of a thrill. Marvin Valtus smirks, teasing her for being scared, but she snaps back that he was the one screaming. While the nobles bicker, their retainers are a mess, tending to broken bones and bleeding comrades. Turan observes the scene with a cold detachment, noting aloud they were lucky to avoid any casualties. But his inner thoughts tell a different story, a fight where serious injuries could have been avoided entirely. A subtle, knowing look crosses his face as he connects the dots. He realizes that mana users like them are far more durable than knights, yet they use their men as shields. Marvin seems to feel the weight of his stare, turning to ask what the problem is. Turan just offers a placid smile, brushing it off as nothing important. But Azella quickly interrupts, urging Marvin to come and absorb the monster's mana. The three nobles gather around the fallen beast, preparing to absorb its residual mana. Turan reaches out, and a torrent of brilliant green energy begins to pour into his hand. His theory is confirmed just as the book described. The mana doesn't weaken when shared. But almost instantly, both Marvin and Azella are forced to stop, whining that they've already hit their pathetic growth limits. Azella watches in stunned silence, finally realizing Turan's true value and immense mana capacity. He continues to drink in the power, a whirlwind of energy that proves he hasn't even reached his own limit yet. With the hunt concluded, the group and their retainers begin the long walk back to the Valtus estate. Marvin sheepishly admits that if it weren't for Turan's tracking and finishing blow, they never would have succeeded. Turan just dismisses the praise, insisting his contribution wasn't anything spectacular. He even adds that he regrets not noticing the monster's search ability sooner, leaving the other two nobles utterly speechless. Turan explains his theory that monsters awaken abilities based on their external features. He deduces the gorilla's big hands and eyes likely gave it incredible throwing power and sharp vision. Marvin is stunned by his insight, but Turan casually reveals he just read about it in an encyclopedia. The library? Marvin scoffs, calling it a stuffy place with books so difficult he couldn't even finish half a volume. Turan just smiles, suggesting Marvin could simply ask the librarian for an easier book next time. The word librarian piques Azella's interest, a curious and scheming look crossing her face. Turan's expression drops. He realizes these nobles don't even know someone manages the library. Later, he returns to the magnificent, vine-covered tower that serves as the estate's library. Inside, the mysterious long-haired girl in white robes greets him, warmly welcoming him back by name. And a sudden realization hits Turan. He'd been careless. No commoner would ever address a noble so informally. And besides, there's something about her unsettlingly wide grin that doesn't exactly scream librarian. Turan cuts straight through the facade, demanding to know how she knew his name. For a moment, she seems genuinely surprised by his directness. But that surprise quickly twists into a sly, knowing smile. She props herself up on a table, mockingly asking if he's only just now figuring things out. Just as he suspected, she explains she learned his name from his library permit. But then she reveals her true power, claiming her gaze reaches every corner of this domain as a book floats to her hand. Turan accepts this display of power calmly, simply asking what he should call her then. She claims she doesn't really have a name, telling him to call her whatever he wants. She leans in close, teasingly suggesting "my love," but Turan shuts her down, stating librarian is fine, much to her annoyance. She mocks him for suddenly being so polite after ordering her around, though Turan denies ever doing that. He pushes back, clearly flustered, telling her not to get so close because it's a bit much for him. Changing the subject, he asks if she's an old wizard, but she gleefully reveals she was never a person to begin with, she's a spirit. With a flourish, she explains her soul inhabits the entire library, making her a unique kind of entity. Her human form is just a convenient illusion for communication, one she cheekily implies is based on his preferences. Turan scoffs, telling her not to make stuff up, but she insists her form is simply like a reflection in water. He pauses, stroking his chin, a sudden realization dawning on him as he processes her words. Without a word, he reaches out, pressing his hand firmly against her chest to test his new theory. The spirit girl is shocked by the sudden contact, asking what he's doing and admitting it feels weird. She grits her teeth in annoyance, sarcastically apologizing and lamenting that she can't use her power directly on an intruder. She huffs that if she had her way, she'd have punished every last person who ever took a book out carelessly. A sudden thought strikes Turan. It seems House Valtus, and maybe everyone else, has no clue she even exists. The spirit confirms his suspicion, explaining that no one before him ever had the qualifications to perceive her. Her creator, she reveals, made it so only those with a special type could see her, cheekily adding that it's kind of romantic. That word, type, catches his full attention. She clarifies it's what wizards refer to as one's bloodline. He immediately asks her to tell him about his own, but when she suggests he ask his parents, he flatly states he's an orphan. The mood changes, and she offers to check for him, but with one slightly invasive condition: she'll need to examine his body. Turan is completely thrown by the request, stammering in disbelief as she begins to vibrate with anticipation. Her face contorts into a creepy, excited grin, a bit of drool escaping as she wonders if this is really how it's done. Before he can react, the strange girl shoves her hand right through his chest, startling him. She floats there, gleefully exclaiming they're connected now, as he awkwardly tells her to stop being so weird. Her analysis begins. She can see the pursuer and hunter bloodlines, confirming his link to House Zahar. But as her ethereal eye zooms in, she discovers something unexpected. There's a third component. His blood is mixed, she announces, leaving Turan to wonder what on earth that even means. She explains he's the child of two different bloodlines, but when he asks for the other, she admits she can't see it, it's locked. A locked bloodline isn't too unusual, she reassures him. It will simply awaken naturally as he gets stronger. Turan processes this, his mind immediately turning to the one person this could be connected to, his mother. He recalls how she was always too polite and educated to be a mere commoner, likely a noble whose own power had long since faded. Turan bows, thanking her for the insight, but she just laughs, telling him to stay another month if he's truly grateful. Now, instead of just reading, Turan has a private tutor, the literal spirit of the library. She possesses knowledge from every book, even those lost to time, and demonstrates the invisible world to him. For Turan, having the fundamental laws of nature explained so clearly is a revelation beyond measure. He learns of microorganisms, the tiny life forms that cause disease, and the very process of decay. The lessons continue, covering everything from the refraction of light to the creation of heat through friction. Armed with this godlike knowledge, Turan decides it's time to put theory into practice, starting with decay. He places a fresh red apple on the table, focusing his newfound understanding. With a single, simple touch, the fruit withers and rots into a blackened husk in an instant. Turan is left speechless. It's not a new magic, but understanding the why makes it unbelievably efficient. Just by shifting his perspective of the world, his skill as a wizard has taken a quantum leap. He begins to suspect that powerful houses monopolize this fundamental knowledge to maintain their edge. The librarian girl muses that this explains why civilization's knowledge seems to be degrading over time. With this profound understanding, Turan decides his time in this magical library has come to an end. He informs the spirit that Hez leaving, noting the owner has been hinting it's time to go. She completely panics, flying at him and desperately pleading for him to take her with him. But her dramatic plea ends with a pathetic thud as she faceplants right at his feet. He bluntly asks if she can even leave, to which she admits she can't, pathetically begging him to stay, an offer he immediately passes on. The spirit girl pouts, finally accepting that he's not going to stay. She offers some parting advice, urging him to seek out the legacies of the gods scattered across the land. As Turan heads for the exit, he promises her he'll come back to visit from time to time. She tries to act tough, muttering that he can come or not, it's whatever to her. He just smiles, reassuring her that he has to return. There are still so many books he needs to read. And with that, Turan steps back out into the world, now dressed for a long journey. Consulting the map he acquired, he pinpoints his next destination, the Enroll Desert, home to House Zahar. His course is set. He will make his way directly to their territory. A new resolve fills him as he looks ahead, ready to finally uncover the truth about his parents. And so, Turan leaves the city of Orum behind him, a lone figure walking a new path. He retraces the information from the library's map in his mind. His goal is singular: reach the Zahar family's territory and find answers. But he travels with patience, not haste, stopping to rest as night falls. He figures if the clues have lasted 18 years, they won't vanish in a few more days. Suddenly, a strange sound breaks the tranquility of the forest, and he freezes. It's the frantic, desperate sound of a horse in distress. Taking cover in the undergrowth, he cautiously peers out to see what's happening. A powerful steed is running wild, and just behind it, a man lies injured on the forest floor. Then he sees it. The horse isn't a monster. It has a saddle and is protecting its fallen rider from two cloaked men. The two assailants curse the horse, stunned that a mere beast could be so strong. Turan watches from the shadows, his eyes focused, analyzing the strange confrontation. And as the attackers turn, he realizes with a start they aren't human at all. They're dark elves. One of them raises a hand, weaving signs as a sinister purple energy begins to glow. Dark sludge and mud bubble up from the forest floor, taking on a grotesque shape. He recognizes the magic from his studies. It's the foul necromancy of the dark elves, creating monstrous puppets. Turan hesitates, unsure if he should get involved. For all he knows, the fallen man was the one who started this fight. But then his eyes widen in pure shock and disbelief at what he sees next. One of the dark elves is casually gnawing on a severed human hand. His companion asks for a piece, but the first just scoffs, telling him to eat the one he must have grabbed for himself. The rumors weren't just stories. These things were truly cannibals. Turan decides right then and there to intervene, starting with a simple concealment spell. The two dark elves are too busy complaining about their last meal to notice anything amiss. Suddenly, their grotesque conversation is cut short as one of them is violently torn apart. The survivor stares in utter confusion, splattered with the remains of his own partner. The very ground around him churns with the dark, necromantic energy he was just wielding. A flash of pure panic crosses his face as he realizes what's happening. His own puppets, the monstrous beasts he summoned from the earth, are turning on him. Just then, a single stone flies from the tree line, humming with condensed mana. It smashes into the skull of a beast, blowing it apart just as it lunged for the dark elf's throat. The dark elf roars into the trees, demanding the coward responsible show their face. As if in response, another of his monstrous puppets is torn to shreds by an unseen force. His mind races, finally landing on the impossible truth concealment magic. Thinking he has an answer, he summons a new beast, a golden tracker to sniff out the pest. The creature unleashes a massive sensory wave, a golden ripple meant to expose any hidden foe. From his hiding spot, Turan simply watches the pathetic attempt with a knowing smirk. The dark elf is stunned, his spell found nothing, not even a trace. And just as his confidence shatters, Turan appears, his power coiling around him like a storm. Outraged, the necromancer points, commanding his remaining beasts to tear him apart. But Turan calmly reaches down, placing a hand on the earth, preparing to show him true mastery. He gathers raw, primal fire between his hands, ready to end this. A blistering wave of flame erupts, instantly engulfing one of the earthen beasts. But its monstrous companion charges right through the blaze, completely unfazed. The behemoth slams into Turan, sending him flying backward with brutal force. He pushes himself up with a grin, glad he already dealt with one of the necromancers. But a sudden, sharp pain makes his eyes widen in surprise. The golden fox, forgotten in the chaos, has latched onto his arm with vicious jaws. Without a moment's hesitation, he brings his foot down, crushing the beast under his heel. His focus returns, cold and sharp, as he gets back into his fighting stance. The last remaining summon looms over him, ready to finish what it started. The beast's fist connects, a brutal impact that sends Turan flying. He coughs up blood, the force of the blow rattling him to his core. Collapsing to his knees, he can only watch as his enemies regroup. The last dark elf sneers, promising to make him beg for death for killing his kin. But his victory speech is cut short by a fist smashing into the side of his head. Before he can even process the attack, he's being trampled under the hooves of a warhorse. Turan watches from the ground as his other two opponents turn their attention to the new threat. The horse pivots and slams its body into the massive bull, sending the summon careening away. Pinned to the dirt, the dark elf seethes with pure rage at this sudden humiliation. And in a flash, the horse's owner, Kjorn, blitzes past to finish the job. With a single, brutal swing, Kjorn's blade cleaves the dark elf's head from his shoulders. The body crumples to the forest floor, the fight already over before it could even begin. As the dark magic of the summons dissolves into nothing, Kjorn's magnificent warhorse stands tall. Turan watches, a ragged sigh of relief escaping his lips. It's finally over. But the moment the tension breaks, his battered body finally gives out on him. He collapses to the ground, his consciousness fading, thinking, this is how he's going to die. A moment later, a warm presence nudges his head. It's the warhorse, its massive form leaning down to check on the fallen mage. Turan reaches up, patting its neck with what little strength he has left, whispering his thanks. The horse seems to understand, its intelligent eye watching over him with a calm focus. Sometime later, under the quiet watch of the full moon, the forest is finally at peace. But that peace is shattered by a pained scream as a young man jolts awake from a nightmare. He finds himself not dead, but safe beside a crackling campfire, with a calm figure sitting opposite him. It's Turan, who casually notes that the stranger is finally awake. Confused, the man asks who he is, his mind reeling as memories of the dark elf attack come flooding back. A strong hand helps him steady himself, reminding him he wasn't saved by Turan alone. Kjorn's massive warhorse, Tilly, gently nudges him as if to check on his well-being. Turan explains with a slight smile that the horse is intelligent, knowing it had to protect its master and find a safe place. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the young noble introduces himself as Aziz of the Burke family, and Turan simply gives his own name. With introductions out of the way, Turan immediately presses for information, asking why the Dark Elves were after him in the first place. Aziz explains there was no reason for the attack. They were just ambushed without provocation. Tears well in his eyes as he recalls the sheer, unexpected violence of the assault. Even Kjorn's horse seems to sense the heavy mood, sniffling softly in the background. The young noble finally breaks, overcome with grief for the people he lost. Turan asks if they were family, and Aziz clarifies they were his retainers, men who'd raised him since childhood. Hearing the genuine pain in his voice, Turan can't help but think, this kid seems like a good person. He shifts back to the facts, asking how many dark elves there were, and states he already killed 2 of them. With a quiet focus, Turan's senses begin to expand, casting a net of awareness into the dark woods. His magic sweeps through the surrounding forest, searching for any lingering threats. And just as he suspected, his exploration confirms it. There are no more dark elves nearby. Aziz breaks the quiet tension, asking Turan if he's on some urgent quest himself. He can't quite believe it. How could someone this powerful be traveling all alone? Turan just scoffs, downplaying his own strength and saying he only won with his horse's help. But as he speaks, a powerful blue aura begins to swell around his body. Aziz flinches, his own golden mana flaring to life in a startled, defensive response. Across the campfire, the two energies push against each other in a silent, crackling stalemate. Turan calmly assesses the boy. He's pretty strong, while noting his own power boost came from the dead dark elves. Aziz, however, is sweating bullets, realizing Turan's power feels raw, unrefined, and impossibly potent. He wonders what kind of monster he's dealing with, but Turan just sits there with a calm, knowing look. Seeing an opportunity, Aziz invites the mysterious stranger to his family's estate, promising to repay the debt. Aziz proudly declares his family's name the Burks, master artisans from the north. As thanks, he promises to forge a custom magic artifact, perfectly suited for Turan's power. With the deal struck, the unlikely pair and their horse begin their journey out of the woods. They stop by a makeshift grave, where Aziz laments that he couldn't give his men a proper burial. He then turns and genuinely thanks Turan for not mocking him in his moment of grief. He was always taught that a noble, showing such emotion over subordinates, was a pathetic display. His father believed that mourning the fallen was a weakness, that a true leader must be unfeeling. Staring at the stone, Aziz quietly admits that if that's what strength is, hell, never have it. But Turan simply shakes his head, telling him that's not weakness at all, it's kindness. Feeling a new sense of camaraderie, Aziz suggests they drop the formal speech, and Turan agrees. Beaming, Aziz extends a hand, declaring that he's counting on his new friend. Turan just stares for a moment, the word friend echoing strangely in his thoughts. But he meets the handshake with a firm grip, sealing their newfound partnership. A little further on their path, Aziz suggests they take a quick break. Turan glances over, wondering what the strange box they've stopped next to is. With a click, Aziz opens it, revealing a magical refrigerated box packed with fresh food. He explains it keeps everything fresh for a week, and Turan can hardly believe it. But that's just the start. Aziz also has a water dispenser, a portable shelter, and a proximity alarm. He even gestures to his own cloak, proudly mentioning its self-cleaning function. Turan is left completely stunned. He thought magic items were rare, but this guy is a walking convenience store. Aziz is almost overwhelmed, feeling that this magical gear is already more than enough to repay his debt. He promises a much greater reward once they reach his home, vowing to make it happen no matter what. But then he changes his tune, admitting that none of his fancy items can compare to what Turan can do. He begins listing off the insane variety of magic he's witnessed: freezing, levitation, even instant death. He asks if Turan has some kind of special bloodline, or if he's spent his entire life dedicated to magic. Turan's answer is simple and maddeningly vague. For him, it just happens. Aziz quickly raises his hands, laughing it off and remembering their agreement not to pry into family matters. Changing the subject, he asks Turan's age, joking that he must be secretly ancient despite his youthful looks. Aziz reveals he's about to turn 19, a fact that leaves him utterly stunned. When Turan calmly states that he's turning 43 this year, Aziz has a sudden revelation, exclaiming that he should have realized there were two geniuses in the world, which leaves Turan utterly confused. He explains he knows another magic prodigy, his second cousin, whose talent might even be close to Turan's own level. Turan, ever the pragmatist, immediately wonders if this cousin could craft a magic item for him, but Aziz clarifies she's from the main family line. The weight of that statement hangs in the air as Turan connects the dots. If it's the main family, then it could only be one person. Exactly. Aziz is talking about the Princess of Arabian, a woman who could one day become the head of the entire great lineage. Their quiet journey continues, the clip-clop of the horse's hooves filling the silence as this new information sinks in. Aziz begins to explain that succession in a great lineage isn't as simple as passing it to your child. Within these powerful families, dozens of relatives from the same generation compete, and often, someone stronger than the direct heir emerges. Yet, among all the patriarch's children, one was born with the greatest talent of all, a girl named Mesa. He continues, boasting that in just 10 years, she mastered their family's bloodline magic and is already, at 21, as strong as the core family members. Turan wonders aloud if such a prodigy received special support from her family. Aziz confirms it with a smile, explaining she even inherited their great-uncle's magic, though others got a small share. It all clicks for Turan, so that's how these great lineages maintain their overwhelming power. As he's lost in thought, Aziz suddenly announces that their long journey is finally over. Turan looks up, his expression shifting from contemplation to surprise. The dense forest path gives way to a gentle rustling in a field of golden grass. Before them stretches the vast, sun-drenched plains of Decane, the heart of Arabian's territory. And in the distance stands their destination, the grand castle of Zabalin, home of the Burke family. Just as they arrive, a woman rushes out with a worried look, calling out her son's name. Aziz's face breaks into a joyful grin as he runs forward to embrace his mother. Turan just stares, completely unimpressed, as Aziz continues his tearful, snotty reunion. 43 what? Crying sessions? A stern-looking butler steps in, chiding the young noble for his lack of dignity and reminding him to address his mother as madam. After composing himself, Aziz proudly introduces Turan as the friend who saved his life, a benefactor who pulled him from the jaws of death. His mother's expression hardens with concern. This journey was supposed to be safe. She demands to know what happened. But when Aziz reveals they were attacked by dark elf necromancers, her worry explodes into pure, unadulterated rage. She's ready to personally lead an army to wipe them out. But the butler quickly steps in, reminding her to calm down and maintain appearances. Once the lady of the house is contained, the butler turns his professional gaze to Turan, asking the all-important question, which family does he belong to? Turan's answer is vague, simply stating that it's a hard thing to say, which only deepens the man's curiosity. He then clarifies with brutal honesty. He was born to a commoner, and he has no idea who his father is. Aziz is completely floored. This is news to him. But his mother's face turns to ice as Turan explains it's not exactly a point of pride. The matriarch sizes Turan up, noting his commoner status, but promising a reward for saving her son. However, she makes it clear he won't be staying in the mansion, offering to lodge him at the finest inn instead. Aziz is furious, demanding to know why the man who saved his life isn't welcome in their home. His mother explains that with an important guest present, they simply cannot allow a stranger inside. But then a calm voice cuts through the tension, telling his aunt not to worry on his behalf. It's Turan, reasoning that the man who saved Aziz is hardly likely to be an assassin. And as if on cue, the important guest herself emerges from a nearby hallway. A pale young woman with long, dark hair and unnervingly vacant eyes steps into the light. Aziz is stunned into silence, calling out her name Misa, asking what she's doing here. Turan immediately identifies her as the Princess of Arabian, though privately thinking she looks more like a corpse. Turan explains he's here to hide, having barely escaped an assassination attempt by Zaharan agents. The word assassination hits Aziz like a ton of bricks. Here? In their heavily guarded home? His mind races to a terrible conclusion. Mesa confirms his worst fears with a deadpan expression. Yes, there's a traitor inside the house. She adds that plenty of her relatives would love to see her gone before coolly wishing them good night. With the princess gone, Aziz's mother reluctantly orders the staff to prepare the second-best guest room for Turan. Night settles over the opulent mansion, a silent witness to the danger lurking within its walls. But Turan finds no peace, his sharp eyes betraying a mind hard at work. He lies in bed, completely sleepless, knowing something is deeply wrong in this house. Unable to rest, he rises and begins to silently patrol the grand hallway. Just then, a voice calls his name, and he turns, his senses on high alert. It's Aziz, greeting him with a friendly wave, and asking what he's doing up so early. Turan, ever observant, points to a magic lamp, and Aziz casually explains, it's just a simple enchantment training tool. He even offers Turan one from storage, but our boy thinks that's a bit excessive. Suddenly, a blinding flash of golden energy erupts from a nearby window. The sheer magical pressure is immense, and Turan instinctively looks up, startled. Aziz, however, seems completely unfazed, musing that it must be Mesa, training as diligently as ever. They both watch the crackling energy as Turan confirms this is the famed Arabian bloodline magic, the Storm lineage. Looking on, Aziz admits that seeing her power makes him a little jealous. She looks like a true god. But for Turan, this display only sparks his curiosity, wondering just how powerful the next heir of Arabian truly is. Aziz suggests they go for a closer look, but Turan wisely declines, knowing it's a bad idea for a suspicious outsider like him to approach. Aziz waves off his concerns, promising to vouch for him since he's clearly not an assassin. Turan raises an eyebrow, realizing the real reason he was brought here, and Aziz admits it. He wants to see who's stronger, Turan or Mesa. A wicked grin spreads across his face as he confesses that he trained with Mesa a few years back, and her talent has been eating at him ever since. All he wants is to see her get flustered, just once. His wish hangs in the air as we see the woman herself, Misa, standing across the courtyard. He calls out her name, and she turns, her gaze as cold and sharp as ice. She acknowledges Aziz, Then her eyes drift to the stranger beside him, prompting Turan to introduce himself. Mesa barely registers his name before cutting straight to the point, asking why they've suddenly appeared. With a forced casualness, Aziz explains they saw her training and thought they'd join in for a friendly spar, just like old times. Oh, she remembers all right. She dryly recalls him struggling for a week on a spell she mastered in 2 tries, right before he ran off crying. Aziz is absolutely seething, while Turan has to physically cover his mouth to keep from laughing at his friend's brutal takedown. Desperate to save face, Aziz quickly changes the subject, hyping up his new friend. He declares Turan a ridiculously talented monster and suggests the two of them fight instead. Mesa's cold expression flickers with something new: interest. A real fight? Turan is left speechless, completely blindsided by his friend's sudden betrayal. Without a single word, Mesa's eyes flare with a brilliant blue, crackling with raw mana. Turan immediately senses the shift, his head snapping up as the very air grows heavy. The sky above them darkens in an instant, ripped apart by veins of golden lightning. A storm of pure magical energy begins to coalesce, swirling violently around her form. Her silhouette is consumed by the tempest, only her glowing blue eyes visible within the raging power. Turan can only stare in disbelief, paralyzed by the sheer, overwhelming pressure. The sheer pressure sends his mind reeling back in time. The raging storm vanishes, replaced by a calm, sunlit sky from his memories. He remembers standing on a bright terrace, a first meeting that defined everything. Back then, he was gasping for air, his mana reserves completely empty from training. Sweat dripped down his face as he struggled just to stand, catching his breath. Then he heard her voice, cold and utterly unimpressed by his efforts. She looked him over and apologized, as if it were a chore to even speak to him. With a dismissive air, she declared he simply wasn't at a level to fight her. Turan gritted his teeth, the casual insult stinging his pride. But the man with them stepped in, explaining that Turan's true gift wasn't raw power, but his genius for learning magic. The instructor praised Turan's innate genius, even cheekily suggesting it surpassed Mesa's. Unimpressed, Mesa's cold gaze met his, demanding he prove such a bold claim. Turan then proposed a simple contest, a race to see who could perform an unknown spell faster. The blonde instructor cheerfully agreed, turning to Mesa for her final approval. She accepted with a condescending air, deciding it would be too unfair to use her innate magic. Declaring she would go first, she planted her foot firmly on the stone ground. Turan and the instructor could only watch, confused by what she was doing. A moment later, a small, glowing sprout burst through the solid floor. In an instant, that single sprout erupted into a swarm of lashing magical vines. The poor instructor was caught completely off guard, crying out as the vines ensnared him. With the instructor dangling helplessly, Mesa calls her display plant creation magic and challenges Turan to match it. She tells the poor guy to just hang tight, finding his dizzy protests quite amusing. But Turan remains completely unfazed, a thoughtful look on his face as he processes what he just saw. He calmly kneels down, placing a hand on the solid stone floor. In his mind, he deconstructs the very nature of magic itself, realizing it's all just manipulation of existing phenomena. He deduces her trick. She didn't create the vines. She just forced pre-existing seeds to grow. With a quiet command, Turan unleashes his own power, channeling a brilliant blue energy into the ground. Mesa's smug expression completely shatters, replaced by pure shock. Even the instructor, still hanging upside down, is rendered speechless by the display. She asks if he's seen this magic before, but Turan coolly states that this is his first time. Mesa stands over her victims, smugly noting that for once, Az's warning had actually been right. She turns her cold, arrogant gaze on Turan, demanding he present his challenge. He calmly considers his next move, knowing that revealing his true bloodline magic here would be suicide. But then, a spark of inspiration flashes in his eyes. He's found a way. He casually gestures towards a nearby planter, beginning his silent counterattack. The leaves begin to rustle, drawing everyone's attention to the sudden movement. And from the undergrowth emerges a completely ordinary little rat. Mesa can't help but scoff, mocking him for thinking mere animal control would work on her. But Turan just kneels down, explaining the creature isn't the spell, it's just an ingredient. His eyes then ignite with that overwhelming blue aura, signaling the real test is about to begin. He grips the rat as a torrent of blue mana violently swirls around his hand. The creature's life force is visibly drained, its body shriveling in his grasp. Mesa's eye widens in shock. This isn't any kind of magic she's ever seen. With a casual flick, Turan drops the lifeless husk, announcing that he's done. But a slow, chilling smirk spreads across her face as she decides it's her turn now. She simply crooks a single finger, issuing a silent, arcane command. On the ground, the dead rat begins to twitch, its limbs spasming back to life. It leaps to its feet, no longer a simple rodent but a monstrous, snarling beast. The reanimated creature scurries directly into her hand, now glowing with her own power. She holds his own spell ingredient against him, a silent and absolute power move. Mesa is left sweating, completely baffled. That wasn't any kind of ordinary magic. Watching from the side, Aziz calls her necromancy disgusting, but Turan just shrugs it off. A slight smirk crosses his face, so even a great noble family doesn't truly understand. Kiorn tries to intervene, suggesting Mesa concede since her spell clearly isn't working. But she snaps back, furious at the suggestion she could possibly lose to him. She begins to channel her power, recalling the fundamental laws of magic and causality. To make a spell work, one needs to understand its cause and have enough mana. But she lacks that deep understanding, forcing her to compensate with raw power alone. When you can't grasp the why of a spell, you can always brute force it with overwhelming mana. Her eyes flare with malicious intent as she unleashes a terrifying curse, to rot while still alive. A sickening squelch echoes as the spell lands, but not on Turan. Instead, a nearby rat begins to gruesomely decay, screaming as the curse takes hold. Aziz is shocked, thinking for a moment that her spell actually worked. Mesa pants heavily, holding up the shriveled corpse, declaring victory. A flicker of exhausted pride crosses her face, confident in her power. But just as quickly, her strength gives out, and she collapses to the ground. Aziz screams her name, rushing to her side in a panic while Turan calmly observes. Turan's mind races. Could it be simple mana depletion? No, that doesn't add up. Fainting isn't a normal side effect. At most, she should just be exhausted. Then, as he puts the pieces together, a sudden realization dawns in his eyes. It all clicks into place for him. He understands exactly what's happened to her. While Aziz panics, Turan effortlessly lifts Mesa and begins giving orders, calling for salt and water. He can't believe how light she is. She didn't just use her mana, she burned through her own life force. Sometime later, within the walls of the Burke family mansion, Mesa's eyes flutter open with a pained groan. Her mother is immediately by her side, frantic with worry for her daughter. Confused, Mesa asks where she is, only to be told that Aziz claimed she fainted during magic practice. Her face darkens at the lie, her silence a clear sign of her displeasure. Her mother's worry turns to suspicion, immediately asking if that strange man, Turan, was responsible. But Mesa frantically denies it, clutching her head and insisting it was her own fault before ordering everyone out. Her aunt brings a bowl of soup, gently reminding her that even mages need to eat. With a worried sigh, she leaves the room, hoping Mesa will care for herself. Mesa quietly thanks her, now alone with her thoughts and the untouched meal. But a sudden resolve hardens her gaze. She knows she can't stay weak forever. She stares down at the soup, a simple meal that feels like a monumental challenge. With a steady hand, she picks up the bowl, ready to face whatever comes next. She brings a spoonful towards her lips, forcing herself to take the first step. But as the warmth touches her mouth, something snaps. Her eyes fly open in sheer terror, the taste triggering a memory she suppressed. A horrifying vision floods her mind, voices screaming, begging their sister Misa to save them from unbearable pain. The memory is too much, and the bowl of soup crashes to the floor. She recoils in her bed, her hand twisting the sheets in a death grip. Overwhelmed by the phantom screams, Mesa clutches her head, trapped in a nightmare she can't wake from. Meanwhile, in a place far removed from her suffering, Turan and Kiorn have descended into the Beck family's secret basement, the Temple of the Limping Goddess. A guard's hand rests on his blade as he remarks on the seamless, ancient strength of the walls. This man, Haram Berg, warns them to abandon any thought of trying to break through this place. Turan simply agrees, thinking to himself that brute force was never his plan anyway. But the guard presses on, his eyes locked on Turan, repeating that this place is very solid. His gaze intensifies, a silent warning that its strength is something to be deeply, truly feared. Turan can't help but wonder, is this guard seriously just bragging about some walls? But then, his eyes catch a sudden movement, and his focus shifts entirely. Haramberg isn't just standing there, he's practicing, swinging a massive greatsword. Turan calls out, asking what he's doing, and gets a simple, blunt reply, training. Without another word, the guard continues his powerful, fluid motions. His blade slices through the air, a blur of practiced, deadly force. Each swing flows perfectly into the next, a relentless and powerful routine. A small smile creeps onto Turan's face as he realizes the sheer efficiency in the man's form. Finally, Haram stops his drill, turning to face the young man who's been watching him. Turan apologizes for interrupting, but the guard simply says it was no bother at all. Haram leans in, demanding to know what Turan truly saw in his swordplay. Caught off guard, Turan can only answer honestly. He thought it was incredible. The guard simply acknowledges the answer, his expression giving nothing away. He begins to explain that most nobles consider martial arts insignificant, a crude alternative to magic. In his eyes, it's a crutch for those with weak bodies and minds that can't control them. Turan silently agrees, knowing that for most, focusing on magic is the more efficient path. But Haram's lesson takes a sharp turn, warning him that trials will always come, whether he's ready or not. And to prove his point, he holds out his massive greatsword, handle first. Turan is stunned, questioning the logic of arming a person he's supposed to be guarding. But Haram just smirks. To him, it's just a piece of iron, and with a body as weak as Turan's, it's no threat at all. Turan reluctantly takes the heavy sword, wondering what a mage like him is supposed to do with it. Haram watches him closely, his sharp eyes missing nothing. As a mage, Turan's first instinct is to try and channel mana directly into the blade. But Haram just smirks, repeating that it's just a bar of iron in the hands of someone with a weak body. Turan seems to agree. Physically, he knows he's no match for this man. Still, Haram waits, anticipating the boy's next move. And there it is, Turan once again defaults to his magic, making the sword glow with raw power. A furious shout erupts from Haram, his patience completely gone. He yells at the boy to stop pouring mana into it like some kind of amateur. Suddenly, Haram is right there, physically correcting Turan's stance with brutal efficiency. Haram barks at him to raise his arm, to shatter his own self-imposed limits. The intense physical training is relentless, forcing Turan to focus on every breath, every muscle. For a moment, Haram almost cracks a smile, acknowledging that the boy's body is a fine vessel. He launches into a lecture, dismissing mana as mere parlor tricks for those who neglect their bodies. A properly trained warrior, he insists, carves a path through battlefields without needing such crutches. But just as the harsh lesson sinks in, a soft sound from behind snaps Turan's attention away. Framed in the grand doorway stands a visitor who has clearly come to see him. It's Aziz's mother, and she approaches with a heavy heart, apologizing for some unforgivable act. Turan, ever the guest, quickly tries to turn the apology around, blaming his own recent conduct. But she insists, explaining that Mesa herself wishes to apologize, and asks if he can spare the time. And there, standing by the window, is Mesa, admitting this whole situation is troublesome. But Turan cuts through the apology, simply glad that she's safe after the attack. Mesa's tone shifts instantly. She's not here for pleasantries. She wants to know about his wrought magic, accusing him of lying about its power. He calmly explains it's a matter of principle, not bloodline, which she immediately assumes means he won't teach it for free. Turan just shrugs, coolly stating he doesn't really care if she calls it bloodline magic or not. This, of course, drives her nuts. Her pride won't let her back down from a magical challenge. Seeing his chance, he proposes a trade, his secret for one of her family's secret arts. With the deal struck, the lesson begins in the grand, empty hall. He holds up a small, rotted creature, revealing the core concept, bio-enhancement magic, but on a microscopic level. And it all clicks for Mesa, realizing her own attempt was just clumsy brute force, a fact that clearly irritates her to no end. Turan smirks, claiming he considered her reckless mana output part of the deal, but Mesa angrily refutes that's not how magic duels work. Fuming, she reluctantly asks him to at least tell Aziz their match was a draw. She can't stand the thought of that guy getting cocky. Since a deal is a deal, she decides to give him his proper compensation and wanders off into another room to find something. She returns, not with some grand magical artifact, but with a simple wooden comb. With a serious expression, she presents it to the utterly confused Turan, ready to begin her part of the exchange. She dramatically runs the comb through her long hair, demonstrating how the strands are attracted and float upwards. She presents this as a grand secret, only for Turan to casually name the phenomenon, static electricity. Her smug expression shatters. She's completely stunned that he already knew about this basic principle. Flustered, she admits this profound secret was a wash, and now she has to find something he doesn't know to repay her debt. A sly grin appears as she finds a loophole. Until she finds a worthy secret, they'll just have to train together, not because she needs him, of course. Turan happily agrees to her terms, suggesting they meet in the garden tomorrow evening. But their training would have to wait, as later that day, an impossibly lavish feast is prepared. Turan finds himself at a grand dining table, surrounded by Mesa and the entire Berg family. Aziz can't help but complain about the sheer opulence, wondering aloud why they're putting on a show fit for a king. Turan, however, isn't fooled by the display. He knows this is far from an ordinary meal. And his suspicions are confirmed when Aziz's mother cuts right to the chase, asking about the magic tool her son promised as payment. Turan calmly confirms the deal, turning the question back to them, asking if they had a specific item in mind. He then makes his request, a defensive tool, something to protect against the kind of surprise attacks that nearly ended Aziz. The family admits they don't have such an item ready, so Turan casually offers to make it himself, much to their shock. But before they can protest further, Aziz cuts in, proudly declaring that he will be the one to craft the item. His mother cuts in, demanding to know how exactly he intends to make such a tool. Aziz lays out his plan. He'll imbue jewelry with mana to draw on the family's guardian bloodline, and it'll only take him 1 month. The matriarch proudly declares that a magic tool from the head wizard's house is an unparalleled gift, even if it's from her less talented son. Turan tries to politely decline, calling the offer excessive, but she snaps back, asking if her son's life is worth so little. Cornered, Turan has no choice but to accept, and is promptly told he must remain as their guest for the entire month. Later, as they walk through the estate, Aziz casually mentions how much his mother has taken a liking to him. He explains that she's impressed by Turan's talent and discipline, seeing him as an equal to their own family's prodigy, Mesa. But Turan sees right through the praise, cutting to the chase. She wants to recruit him into their house. Aziz grins, admitting it's her classic move, give a generous gift, put them in debt, and then tempt them with a pretty lady. He tells Turan not to worry, insisting the tool is just a token of favor and his mother wouldn't stoop to forcing a marriage. Aziz asks about his plans, and Turan calmly replies he's promised to train with Lady Mesa later. But later is too far away for Aziz, who throws an arm around him, insisting they go on patrol. When asked if he was just going to train all day, Turan's deadpan expression says it all. Yes, he was. That's just not acceptable to his new friend, who starts dragging him through the city to enjoy life. And Aziz's idea of a good time apparently starts with a spin of the roulette wheel. He's brought Turan to a gambling den, but our stoic mage looks completely out of place. Aziz tries to get him into the spirit of things, but Turan isn't having any of it, looking more annoyed than entertained. Their tour continues through the bustling marketplace, with Aziz pointing out the sights like an overeager guide. But Turan isn't listening. His attention has been completely snagged by something off to the side. His eyes land on a wanted poster, the face on it clearly striking a chord within him. A jolt of recognition hits him. He knows that face. The name on the poster confirms it, Kiorn. His mind flashes back to the kind, scarred wanderer he met. Could it really be him? Suddenly, he's lost in a different memory, hearing the clash of wooden swords from a stage play. It was a story from long ago, about a legendary knight named Kiorn who fought in the demon desert. The play's hero struck down his foe with divine aid, a tale of epic heroism. And in the audience, a much younger Turan sat beside an ecstatic young Aziz, who cheered wildly. Aziz had asked him if the show was any good, and Turan, ever the quiet one, simply agreed. But now, he remembers the real Kiorn's words, claiming to be just an ordinary knight. The contrast is jarring, and Turan realizes he must one day find the man and learn the truth. Morning light filters into an opulent room, signaling a new day. Turan's eyes snap open, his thoughts of the past cut short by the present. He's immediately met with the intense, silent stare of Haram Berg. The man asks if he's rested well, and a startled Turan can only wonder why he's here. Haram explains that he noticed yesterday how good Turan's vessel is. It's time for toughening, he declares, explaining that a body only grows stronger when it's tempered. Turan immediately agrees. He knows this is a better use of his time than simply resting. But just as they prepare to leave, the door bursts open, and an excited Aziz calls out his name. The boy's cheerful greeting dies in his throat the moment he sees his terrifying uncle standing there. Haram wastes no time, telling Aziz to join them and temper his own weak body, much to the boy's horror. Aziz immediately makes a break for it, yelling that he hasn't recovered yet and bolting out the door. Turan just watches him go, completely baffled by the kid's terrified reaction. But then, a horrifying realization dawns on him. He finally understands what tempering truly means. Soon, he's struggling under immense weight, with Haram barking at him to push past the pain. His entire body trembles, pushed far beyond its limits as he strains for one last rep. Just as he's about to completely collapse, Haram finally calls a halt to the brutal session. Turan falls to the floor, gasping for air, every muscle screaming in protest. Looking down at the exhausted boy, Haram calmly asks if he's tired. He notes that for a wizard like Turan, this one trial should be enough to temper his body. An ordinary person, he explains, would need constant training just to maintain this state. A wizard's mana, Haram continues, keeps their body in optimal condition once it's been forged. He then flashes a chilling smile, declaring that Turan must be fully rested by now. Turan's eyes widen in sheer panic, trying to stammer out that his still completely spent. But Haram isn't listening. Now that his body is tempered, it's time to learn combat. And so, the sounds of suffering once again fill the training hall. The days at Hausberg were, as Turan would later recall, incredibly fulfilling. He'd wake early for brutal sword training with Haram in a special room that multiplied his weight. Then, in the evenings, he'd return to the mansion for intense magic training with Mesa. This grueling cycle repeated itself, pushing his body and mana to their absolute limits. Before he even realized it, 3 weeks had passed, and his power was steadily growing. Outside in the courtyard, Turan tries to channel a new element, but the crackling lightning on his finger fizzles out once more. He missed again. Mesa watches on, noting that he's struggling far more than she anticipated. With a wry smile, Turan offers an excuse he's not from Arabian, the land of lightning mages. So what can you do? She admits this is outside her expertise too. For her, you just shoot the lightning, and it hits. But their focused session is suddenly broken when a voice calls out her name. A young man from the main house hurries toward them, having finally tracked her down. His eyes flick over to Turan, sizing him up with a hint of disdain. Who is this stranger with the esteemed Lady Mesa? Mesa, however, steps protectively in front of Turan, her voice cold as she asks what he wants. She gave clear orders not to be disturbed. The messenger bows his head but holds his ground, stating that the patriarch himself has summoned her. The news he brings is dire. Dark elves are rampaging in the south. 3 cities have already fallen, and an expeditionary force is being formed immediately. The messenger's words paint a grim picture. A horde of dark elves, their eyes glowing with malice. Turan listens, the gravity of this sudden war sinking in. With 3 cities already lost, a massive expedition is the only answer. Mesa calmly accepts the summons, telling the messenger she will return to the main house shortly. But as he leaves, she turns back to Turan, knowing her time here is now limited. She muses that she should probably collect payment for teaching him that disgusting decomposition magic. Then, a new idea seems to strike her, a final lesson before she departs. She places a hand on his chest, asking if he knew that electricity flows through the human body. Turan is completely thrown off, having no idea what she's talking about. Mesa looks down on him with a smug grin. Of course he wouldn't know. This is a secret of the great Arabian house. She offers him a deal. She'll teach him this, and his debt will be considered paid. With a smirk, she begins her lesson, explaining how all senses are signals sent to the brain. Turan closes his eyes, absorbing this completely foreign concept of magic. She stresses the point, every sensation is just a tiny electrical signal, and this electricity isn't just in the brain, it flows through the entire body. The secret, she reveals, is learning to accelerate those signals through their pathways. A surge of brilliant blue energy crackles through her, a contained storm of power. Her eye glows intensely, the sigil of her family's magic blazing in her pupil. She stands before him again, a small butterfly of pure mana now fluttering at her side. The lesson is over, and now, it's time for the practical demonstration. With the mana butterfly resting over her eye, Mesa coolly asks how he's finding her little demonstration. Turan can only laugh in utter disbelief, his mind struggling to comprehend what he just witnessed. Suddenly, a jolt of pure energy surges through him, the new magic sparking violently in his mind. He stumbles forward, clutching his head as an agonizing headache rips through his senses. Mesa watches, unimpressed, noting that he succeeded only by recklessly dumping his mana. She casually explains that while it's rough now, he'll eventually get used to it, but Turan feels this gift is far too great. She scoffs at his sentiment, dropping a small, sharp object to the ground with a clink. It's just an investment, she says, before launching herself into the air with a powerful burst of mana. As she soars away, she declares that she'll be back to collect on this debt, with interest. Turan is left standing alone, completely dumbfounded by the power and the woman who just vanished into the sky. A hawk's cry pierces the air, signaling a new day and a new stage. We're in Morgan City, where a massive crowd has gathered, all clad in dark, solemn cloaks. The people erupt in a zealous chant for the glory of Arabian. A group of nobles watches on, one commenting that this departure to hunt dark elves feels more like a victory parade. Suddenly, a young blonde noble named Ashish lights up, spotting someone important in the procession. He excitedly points toward a figure on horseback, calling out the name Mason. His father quickly grabs his arm, hushing him and reminding him to maintain his composure as a noble. The mood shifts as an announcement rings out. The head of the house is entering. A line of attendants in blue robes stands at attention, their presence heralding a grand arrival. The white-haired noble's gaze narrows, his attention completely fixed on the person about to appear. And then he arrives, a figure of immense presence, the current head of the Arabian house. His name is Badal Arabian, and his gaze is as sharp and cold as the winter sky. Watching from the balcony, the white-haired noble murmurs to Ashish that the head looks unwell, far too pale. He speculates that it might not be old age, but the lingering effects of a legendary battle from long ago. But Bottle pays the whispers no mind, simply raising a hand towards the open sky. The entire crowd looks up, their boisterous cheers dying down in sudden, breathless anticipation. A strange light reflects in the eyes of the people as the world holds its breath. The sky above darkens in an instant, a storm gathering from nothing. Golden lightning crackles down, not to strike, but to weave through the air like a living entity. It envelops the crowd in a holy light, their faith reignited as they scream praise for the Lord of Thunder. Watching from the balcony, Turan can only stare in awe. So this is the true power of Arabian. Even in his weakened state, Badal's golden lightning blankets the entire city, a feat considered the pinnacle of human achievement. A fire ignites in Turan's eyes, a burning resolve that one day, he too will wield such power. The moment is broken as Ashish steps forward, offering him a strange, woven bracelet. He explains it's a powerful artifact that boosts physical stamina, and with mana, can even match a guardian noble's strength. But he offers a friendly warning. It burns through mana at an alarming rate, so it's best not to rely on it for too long. Turan examines the gift, genuinely impressed. This is an incredible treasure, an item rarely seen even among the great houses. Just then, Aziz's mother finally steps forward, addressing him directly by his name, Turan. With the gift as a clear preamble, she makes her move, asking if he has any interest in formally joining their house. But Turan, ever the lone wolf, politely turns her down, explaining that such a path would be difficult for him. She simply smiles, admitting Ashish had already warned her that Turan wasn't one to be tied down. Promising to never forget their hospitality, Turan declares the Berg family his friends forever as he departs. Stepping out into the quiet courtyard, he begins to walk away, his business here seemingly concluded. But a sudden presence makes him pause, his senses on high alert. Standing before him are Aziz and a stern, powerfully built man Turan doesn't recognize. The man wordlessly offers him a dagger. He explains it's a simple, magical device, nothing fancy, but durable and incredibly sharp. Turan accepts the gift with a bow of gratitude. But the man's next word freezes him in place. Master. A faint, knowing smile curls on the retainer's lips. Haramberg departs, leaving Turan alone with that single, baffling word still echoing in his mind. But she's not alone for long, as Ashish appears, warmly draping a dark cloak over his shoulders. Turan looks confused, but Ashish just grins, recalling how he'd mentioned being jealous of his clothes. He presents a full set of enchanted garments that repel dirt and even mend themselves from light damage. Our boy is visibly touched, a soft smile forming as he looks at his friend. Ashish says he considers Turan a good friend, someone who inspired him just by being himself. As they prepare to part ways, he asks where Turan plans to go, and the answer is simple: east. Ashish shudders, warning him to avoid taking a ship if he can, remembering the horrible waves near Carmane. But Turan knows he has no choice. His true destination, the Elril Desert, lies beyond those very seas. Ashish sends him off with a final command: return safely, and pay him back for the cloak. And so, Turan begins his long journey east, just another traveler on the open road. The path eventually clears, leaving him alone once more, a solitude he seems to welcome. A playful thought crosses his mind as he looks down the empty road. Why walk when you can run? In an instant, he explodes forward with incredible force. A poor traveler who happened to be nearby can only stare, completely dumbfounded. Turan becomes a literal blur, the world streaking past him at impossible speeds. The very air seems to warp and flash around him from the sheer velocity. Each step kicks up a storm of dirt, a testament to the power he's unleashing. He comes to a stop, a little breathless, and even surprised by his own new capabilities. His little sprint has already brought him to the edge of a vast forest, with mountains looming in the distance. But as he stands at the forest's edge, he catches a strange scent on the wind. Something is off, and his senses sharpen, trying to place the smell. He realizes with dawning horror it's not a campfire, it's the stench of burning flesh. His eyes widen, and he immediately starts moving toward the source. Cresting a hill, he's met with a scene of absolute devastation, an entire village, wiped out. A desiccated corpse, crawling with maggots, hints at the gruesome fate of its people. Everywhere he looks, there are more bodies, left to rot where they fell or tied to posts. Walking through the eerie silence, he tries to process the massacre around him. He dismisses bandits. This level of carnage seems too extreme, yet the Dark Elves shouldn't be this far. The scale of the destruction is immense, leaving him to wonder what could have done this. Amidst the ruin, his eyes land on something out of place, a hidden trapdoor in the floorboards. He kneels down, a gut feeling telling him this is it, someone might be down there. His bandaged hand closes around the wooden handle, ready to uncover the truth. With a grunt of effort, he rips the heavy cellar door from its frame. He peers into the darkness below, his expression hardening with anticipation. And there she is, a tiny girl, huddled in the gloom, a lone survivor. The moment she sees him, a piercing scream of pure terror echoes from the cellar. Turan immediately raises his hands, trying to show her he's not a threat, that he came to help. Tears stream down her face as she looks up, a flicker of hope in her eyes as she asks if he's telling the truth. He gently reassures her, asking the one question that matters. What happened here? The girl whispers that a mage killed everyone, a clue that immediately catches Turan's attention. But before she can say anything else, her strength gives out, and she collapses. He scoops her into his arms, relieved to find she's only suffering from exhaustion. His immediate priority is to get her somewhere safe, away from this devastation. Just then, the air crackles with chilling energy as a bow of pure ice is formed. Turan's head snaps up, sensing the new arrivals just as a voice calls out. A squad of armed individuals has him cornered, led by a fierce-looking blonde archer. She draws her icy bow, demanding he get on his knees immediately. Unfazed, Turan simply holds the sleeping girl as she brands him a murderous bastard. It's clear they've mistaken him for the one who destroyed this entire town. Her voice rings out, filled with righteous fury, her ice arrow aimed squarely at his heart. Turan just looks back, completely unbothered by her calling him a murderer. She screams at him, convinced he's trying to kidnap the last survivor of his supposed massacre. One of her companions, a nervous-looking swordsman, ignites a blade of fire, warning Turan not to move. Turan tries to explain that this is all a huge misunderstanding, but the kid is wound way too tight. And with a twitch of his hand, the swordsman accidentally unleashes a torrent of flame right at them. The explosion rips through the ruins, far more powerful than he intended. The archer immediately grabs her idiotic teammate, furious that he attacked while a child was in the line of fire. But as she's berating him, her eyes widen in disbelief at what she sees through the smoke. From the heart of the blaze, a hand emerges, completely unharmed. Turan emerges from the smoke, a strange blue energy swirling around his arm. He sighs internally, not having expected to use this power so soon. His accusers are frozen in shock. He blocked the attack with his body and has no burn marks. The archer's mind races. What kind of defensive magic was that? A bloodline ability? Cradling the girl, Turan calmly states this is a misunderstanding, but warns that he won't just defend a second time. The blonde archer hesitates, her ice bow still drawn, but her certainty completely shattered. The child in his arms remains peacefully asleep, a small island of calm in the tense standoff. She finally starts to reason with herself. It makes no sense to commit a massacre only to save one victim. Lowering her bow, she introduces herself as Bison, and he replies with his name, Turan. But one of her companions remains unconvinced, pointing out that all the evidence still paints Turan as the villain. Turan cuts him off, suggesting they simply ask the girl herself once she's awake, because she saw the real culprit. His confident claim sends a shockwave through the accusers, their certainty completely shattered. Bison is stunned the child is a witness. She actually saw the arsonist. Turan admits he doesn't know who this supposed killer is, which only deepens their confusion. She explains the grim rumors of a mad mage, a monster who's been burning entire villages to the ground. Just then, the little girl wakes up and describes the man she saw. A big, bearded man in a red cloak. Her testimony clearly doesn't match Turan, and the realization dawns on Bison's party. Bison glances back at the man she'd just threatened, a deep sense of shame washing over her. Overcome with guilt, she and Gil offer a deep, sincere apology for their terrible mistake. The tense situation reminds Turan of Medan, another good man whose sense of duty had once been clouded by envy. Turan waves off their apology, noting that their concern for the child was all that really mattered. Bison explains they were hunting the arsonist, and, seeing the fire, thought they'd finally caught their man. But now, with a proper description, she's confident, revealing they have a natural tracker among them. Turan's interest is piqued. A tracker? He casually guesses she must be from the renowned Zahar family. Bison flails her arms in a panic, hastily correcting him. She's from the Carmen family, all the way from Abicha. She explains that Asha here has a diluted Zahar bloodline, a primitive version good for tracking magic but nothing else. With the introduction sorted, she turns to the real issue, gesturing toward the smoldering ruins. Bison formally asks Turan if he would help them hunt down the arsonist responsible for this carnage. To sweeten the deal, she offers him the entire reward. She only needs the merit points for completing the mission. Turan cuts to the chase, asking the most important question. How strong is this mad mage? A noble level threat, she confirms. Turan considers this. a mage powerful enough to slaughter trained knights. A faint smile plays on his lips. The roadside monsters were getting boring. This is exactly the challenge he needs. He gives a simple, one-word answer. Fine. Bison's face immediately lights up with relief. But first, there's a child orphaned by the attack who needs to be taken to safety. Turan hands a local villager a heavy pouch of money, more than enough to raise the girl. He then adds a quiet promise, a subtle threat, that he'll be back in a few years to check in on her. The man trembles, clutching the pouch, the weight of that promise sinking in deep. With the girl's future secured, they turn their attention back to the desolate, ruined village. Now, it's the tracker's turn. Aisha closes her eyes, focusing her Zahar-descended senses on the lingering mana. Her eyes snap open, glowing with power. She's found a trail. The hunt begins now. Turan looks to the tracker, his patience wearing thin as she confirms she needs a bit more time. But soon enough, with the ruined town behind them, Asha points with certainty. The path is clear. She leads them into the woods, following tracks almost invisible to the naked eye. Their quarry left a clumsy trail of broken trees, a clear sign of a desperate flight. Asha pauses, taking a deep breath, her senses sifting through the scents of the forest. As she drops to the ground to inspect the trail, Turan finally asks her how she's doing it. She explains her two-step process. First, the footprints, and now, the faint smell of ash clinging to their target. Turan can't help but be impressed. Her skills were professional. She only failed to find him because she didn't know who to look for. Then, a spark of recognition in her eyes. She shouts that she's found it. Asha takes off in a blur, forcing a startled Bison to yell after her to slow down. The hunt is on. Their relentless pursuit finally takes them out of the woods and into the high mountains. The trail of ash and broken branches leads them to a single, ominous cave entrance. Bison takes charge, telling Turan to join her at the front while the others provide backup. She conjures a small orb of light, its glow pushing back against the oppressive darkness. With their only light source in hand, the party cautiously ventures into the chilling depths. After a few steps, Bison halts, calling out into the gloom, sensing a presence nearby. Asha's sharp eyes confirm it. She whispers that there's one person hiding deeper inside. They press forward, the passage opening into a massive, cavernous chamber. Bison's expression hardens as she spots the faint, flickering glow of a fire ahead. The walls are lined with lit torches, proof that their target has made this place their den. And there he is, a lone figure standing before a roaring fire as if waiting for them. He turns, his eyes unnervingly vacant, asking what brings them to his isolated little home. Turan watches him carefully as Aisha confirms that strange, foul scent is definitely coming from this man. Bison wastes no time on pleasantries, manifesting a bow of solid ice and aiming it dead center. The man just smirks, playing dumb, acting like he has no clue about any kidnapped villagers or burnt-down houses. But the act drops in a heartbeat as he lunges forward, his hand crackling with malicious energy. He unleashes a massive fireball, a roaring inferno meant to incinerate them all on the spot. The blast engulfs the cavern, but the arsonist screams in shock as his own attack seems to turn against him. A bandaged hand emerges from the flames, not burned, but glowing, with a cool blue power that seizes control of the fire. The inferno parts, revealing Turan and Bison completely unharmed, ready to show this pyromaniac what real fire magic looks like. The arsonist's eyes go wide with shock. His own magic, turned against him? Impossible. But Bison doesn't give him a moment to recover, firing an ice arrow straight through the swirling heat. It slams into his chest with a sickening thud, a perfect, chilling shot. He stumbles back and collapses, clutching the wound as he hits the hard cavern floor. Yet the look in his eyes isn't one of defeat. It's pure, unadulterated rage. With his last bit of strength, he slams a bloody hand onto the ground, channeling a different power. The very earth trembles as a colossal stone hand erupts from below, reaching to crush them both. Turan looks on, slightly surprised. Earth manipulation? He was certain this man only used fire. The massive hand comes crashing down, intending to obliterate him completely. But Turan is already in motion, effortlessly leaping away from the devastating impact. But the arsonist isn't finished, reaching out with his last ounce of strength. A flash of brilliant blue energy cleaves right through the massive stone hand. The force of the blow sends the arsonist hurtling through the air, screaming in agony. Turan reveals another new trick, gathering raw lightning in the palm of his hand. He unleashes the torrent of electricity, engulfing the downed man's body. The arsonist can only writhe in agony, his eyes rolling back into his head. When the dust settles, Turan is already sitting calmly, amidst the debris of the destroyed hand. He stands over the smoking, twitching body, confirming his kill. Bison rushes to his side, but Turan just tells her to check on the others. He'll handle this one. Checking the body, He finds something strange clutched in the man's hand, a handful of mysterious seeds. But before that final, fatal strike, the arsonist had been thoroughly subdued. Turan's mana had wrapped around him, locking him down completely. With the man's sight and movement sealed, Turan knew it was already over. He wakes the captive with the flat of his blade, ready for a little interrogation. The man just smirks, not a hint of fear in his eyes. He clearly doesn't know who he's dealing with. Turan's patience wears thin, pressing the cold steel to his throat with a simple warning. Don't even think about using mana. As the others watch on, the arsonist demands to know how they found his hideout, but Turan just confirms his identity. The man's only response is a stubborn, defiant silence. So Turan decides to get him talking, sinking his knife deep into the arsonist's side. He leans in close, his voice cold as he asks why a rogue noble is burning commoners alive, promising that a murderer gets no mercy. The arsonist starts raving, claiming God told him to burn the flesh of sinners to ascend. His companions can only stare in disbelief at the sheer madness of his words. He grins, revealing that God supposedly taught him a secret, how to obtain other bloodlines. Just a few more human sacrifices, he sputters, and he'll finally gain the flame bloodline. Bison is appalled, questioning how anyone could steal an innate power like that. Turan, however, listens with a chillingly calm expression, his mind working. He realizes this isn't just some random act of a madman. Medan chimes in, pointing out that people gain power by killing demonic beasts all the time. Has seen mages do it. It's a known principle, just applied in a horrific new way. As the arsonist continues his chant, Turan understands. This isn't a delusion, but a twisted, horrifying plan. Turan's mind races, his bandaged hand clenching tight. Perhaps he's just stumbled upon a fundamental, terrifying secret of this world. But before he can process it, Medan has heard enough, and his sword flashes across the arsonist's throat. The madman's body slumps to the cracked earth, his final, insane prayer silenced for good. Suddenly, the self-proclaimed hero Medan looks pale, covering his mouth as he stumbles back. He chokes out that killing a helpless, bound man felt less like justice and more like slaughtering livestock. Bison just scoffs, telling him to stop being foolish. That man would have burned them all without a second thought. She turns away, muttering that a quick death was far too merciful as she glances toward Turan. But our boy isn't even paying attention, instead stooping down to retrieve a small book from the corpse. He kneels, opens it, and begins to write, meticulously recording the new, horrifying data he's just acquired. Inside the book, he finds a map marked with the arsonist's trail of destruction, all the proof they could ever need. But as he flips the page, his eyes widen at what he sees next. These aren't just ramblings, but complex combination formulas he's never encountered, and he wonders if that god was the source. Bison walks over, snapping him out of his thoughts and telling him to get ready. It's time, she declares, to absorb the madman's power for themselves. A strange green energy erupts from the corpse, flowing into Turan and the rest of the party. Later, a representative from House Carmen formally congratulates Bison on her success. He lavishes her with praise, calling her a rising star, while Turan simply watches from the side. Bison explains their plans to continue traveling and hunting monsters for a while. Then she turns to Turan, handing him a heavy pouch of coin and asking what he'll do now. With his payment in hand, Turan states his next destination. He's heading straight to Abacha. Bison leans in close, whispering a reminder about the explosive information they learned, trusting he'll keep it quiet. With their paths now diverging, she, Asha, and Gil give him a final, friendly farewell. Turan waves back, figuring it's for the best they don't mention him, as there's no definitive proof of his power yet. And with that, he sets off alone, his journey taking him into a vast and desolate desert. He presses onward, a solitary figure swallowed by the endless, rolling dunes. After some time, he stops, noticing a distinct shift in the air. It's growing humid. He flexes his bandaged hand, trying to get a feel for the ambient mana in this new region. Just as he suspected, a test flame reveals his firepower is weaker here, and it's draining his reserves faster. On the other hand, the abundant moisture in the air means his water magic is now far more potent. This new environment makes his water magic almost effortless to conjure. The reason for the change can only mean one thing. He's finally reached the coast, the endless desert now behind him, and laid out before him is the sprawling port city of Abacha. He makes his way into town, finding a local tavern to get his bearings. Inside, he overhears a group of sailors complaining about their next voyage. They're dreading the return trip across the sea, back to the Enroll Desert. The route is apparently swarming with aggressive merfolk and ruthless pirates. Their captain gripes that they're desperate for a skilled knight to protect them. And as if on cue, a certain someone just happens to be walking past their table. Turan steps forward, asking the captain if his ship is headed for the Enroll Desert. The captain scoffs, saying they have no room. A barrel of booze is more important than a passenger. But before he can continue, Turan's bandaged hand reaches for the man's drink. The captain's eye widens, wondering what this kid thinks he's doing. With a single touch, the entire mug of ale is instantly frozen into a jagged block of ice. The captain can only stare, dumbfounded. There's no way that's high-level magic. The rest of the crew scrambles to their feet, suddenly very respectful, but Turan waves it off, saying he's the one asking to be hired. Now addressing him as Sir Knight, the captain cautiously asks what he wants. Turan lays out his terms: passage to the desert, and in return, he'll handle any pirates or merfolk they encounter. The captain is still hesitant, admitting their ship is poor and they can't even afford a proper room for a night. Turan cuts him off, stating plainly that he doesn't care about the pay or the poor conditions. His only goal is reaching the desert, and the captain's eye goes wide. This is too good to be true. A powerful mage working for free? He slams his hand on the table and immediately seals the deal. And just like that, Turan is welcomed aboard, his passage to the next continent secured. But the scene suddenly shifts, throwing us into a hellish vision of a city engulfed in flames. This isn't just a raid, it's a full-blown war, with fortifications shattered and streets littered with the dead. In the heart of the inferno, a lone warrior stands his ground, panting heavily as he clutches his sword. He's facing down a monstrous brute, a hulking creature with glowing yellow eyes roaring in fury. The warrior desperately evades a crushing blow, his movements a blur of survival against overwhelming power. But as he dodges, a new, more sinister threat emerges from the flames right behind him. Hez not just facing one enemy, Hez ambushed by a swarm of masked assailants. The warrior is completely overwhelmed, his sword a desperate blur against their relentless attacks. Hulking brutes join the fray, their fists crashing down as the battlefield descends into pure chaos. Terror grips him as he realizes there's no way out. He's about to be torn apart. But just as hope fades, the heavens themselves begin to roar with an unnatural, golden light. A colossal storm of lightning erupts from the sky, instantly vaporizing the monstrous horde. The young warrior turns, his mind reeling as he stares at the field of charred bodies. From the smoky sky, a lone figure descends, landing with an impossible grace amidst the carnage. He stammers his thanks, but the woman simply looks down at him with cold authority, ordering him back to his unit. Without another word, he scrambles to obey, leaving the powerful commander to survey her handiwork. Suddenly, a powerful figure appears at her side, calling out her name, Mesa. He is Kadram Arabian, the force's vice-captain, and he immediately asks if she's been hurt in the battle. She coolly replies no, but her uncle warns her not to push herself. Her life is worth more than any mere night. Brushing it aside, Mesa asks for a battle update. The area is nearly secure, but the enemy's tunnels are still missing. A cold glint appears in her eyes as she declares she'll go to the tunnels herself once they're found. Before he can object, she rockets into the sky, leaving him hovering over the smoldering battlefield. Kadram lets out a frustrated click of his tongue. What an insolent girl, he thinks, blaming his brother for raising her to be so headstrong and reckless. He worries that her path is leading her to the same tragic end as her mother and younger brother. As she flies on, the scene shifts to a vast, churning ocean, mirroring the storm of conflict to come. A lone ship sails across the vast, unforgiving ocean. On its deck, Turan stares out at the endless horizon, his mind lost in a sea of doubt. Hez heading to the land of Zahar, but feels completely lost on how hell even begin to find clues. With no idea about his father's fate, barging in blindly feels like a death sentence. All he has are a few heirlooms and a simple portrait of his mother's face. His hand tightens on the railing, a quiet frustration building within him. Suddenly, a hand claps his shoulder, and the ship's captain cheerfully tells him hell burn a hole in the seabed with that stare. Turan plays it off, saying he was just thinking about how vast the ocean is. The captain chuckles, asking if the landlubber is handling the seasickness all right. Hez heard how the noble Sir Knight has been eagerly learning everything from tying knots to handling sails, much to the crew's delight. Turan just smiles, admitting that he figured the knowledge would be useful, and it's actually been quite fun. Just then, a booming voice from below deck announces that it's finally mealtime. The captain claps his hands together with a grin, gathering the crew to eat before getting back to work. The meal is simple sailor's fare, bland meat and a side of pickled cabbage. As they eat, an old sailor remarks that without this sour cabbage, they'd all have died from gum disease long ago. He explains it's a nasty illness that makes your gums bleed, but sour food somehow keeps it at bay. Turan, fork paused midair, finds this fascinating and asks how anyone even discovered that. The old salt shrugs, adding that before this trick was known, he'd heard grim tales of sailors eating merfolk raw. But their morbid conversation is cut short by a sudden, urgent shout from the crow's nest. A ship has been spotted. The crew looks up in alarm as the lookout frantically tries to identify the vessel, wondering if it's pirates. Through the spyglass, the lookout's report chills the air. The approaching ship flies no house crest. The old sailor sighs, convinced their luck has run out. It has to be pirates. Without hesitation, the captain orders them to prepare for battle, and the crew rushes to arm themselves. On deck, the captain informs Turan that the enemy ship is faster. A long chase would be suicide. He squints through his scope, weighing their slim chances of reaching a nearby island if the winds are just right. But instead of running, he turns to their trump card, quietly asking Turan if he can handle this. Turan's reply is a calm, confident smile. As long as there are no nobles or knights aboard, it's no problem at all. That's all the captain needed to hear. He bellows the order to turn the ship. They will engage. With a great swing, the vessel comes about, no longer fleeing but sailing straight towards the threat. The pirates pull alongside, laughing and shouting for their surrender, a foolish demand they'll soon regret. A crewman wonders if they'll be spared, but Turan already knows the answer. He sarcastically asks if getting tossed overboard without legs counts as mercy, just as he expected. With a firm stomp, he launches himself into action. He soars across the gap, a one-man boarding party aimed right for their deck. Turan lands with a crash, his blade a blur of motion before they can even react. The pirates are stunned, shouting in disbelief at this impossible assault. But the real show is just beginning, as the sea around them starts to boil. Vicious spears of ice materialize from the water, summoned by his will. They rain down upon the deck, a merciless barrage that skewers the pirates where they stand. A cold smile touches his lips. For people like this, he has no reason to hold back. Amid the chaos, one pirate screams at his crewmates to stop panicking and fight back. But it's too late, as the ice spears continue their deadly work, piercing flesh and wood alike. Turan watches the carnage with a cold, almost satisfied smirk. If they're this kind of scum, he thinks, then there's absolutely no reason to spare them. He stands amidst the fallen, a silent executioner facing the terrified survivors. The remaining pirates, driven by fear and a sliver of courage, decide it's either him or them. With a unified battle cry, they charge forward in a last, desperate attempt. But Turan's eye simply flares with a brilliant, chilling blue light. He raises his hand, and the very air around him begins to condense and swirl. A colossal blade of water and ice forms at his command, ready to cleave through them all. And with a single, horrifying splash, the colossal blade carves through the first man to reach him. Even as their comrades are butchered, the survivors scream for the others to keep pushing forward. But Turan has already adapted, the water reforming into twin, elegant blades for close-quarters combat. He becomes a whirlwind of death, his movements a fluid dance that leaves only bodies in its wake. There's no wasted motion, just cold, perfect efficiency with every sidestep and every lethal thrust. He uses the ship's railing to pivot, driving a blade of pure ice straight through another pirate's chest. A massive axe swings down, but the brute wielding it gets nothing more than a bored glance from his target. Turan simply glides through their pathetic attacks, a phantom they can't possibly hope to touch. His eyes are like chips of ice, his focus absolute as he prepares to end this farce. And with one last, sweeping motion, a great wave of water crashes over the deck, silencing them all for good. But even as the bodies fall, some pirates refuse to accept their fate. One manages to get behind Turan, screaming as he drives a knife into his back. For a glorious second, he thinks he's done it, yelling for his crewmates to finish the job. But his partners in crime can only stare in disbelief at what happens next. A flicker of something registers in the pirate's eye. Confusion. Turan glances back, not with pain, but with sheer, utter annoyance. The blade simply didn't penetrate, stopped by a will stronger than steel. And before the pirate can even process this impossibility, Turan strikes back. A blast of icy power erupts from his body, tearing through the man who dared touch him. With a predatory grin, he spins around, ready for the next fool to step up. He becomes a phantom of blue light and crimson, cutting down every pirate in his path. The air fills with the screams of dying men as the deck is painted red. And when the chaos finally settles, he stands alone, a chilling silhouette over the carnage. Not a single pirate is left breathing. The entire crew has been wiped out by one man. Just then, a rope flies across the water, latching onto the now silent pirate vessel. A new crew boards, their captain laughing, impressed by the bloody scene Turan has left behind. His sailors, on the other hand, are absolutely ecstatic, cheering for the knight who single-handedly ended the threat. One of them approaches, urging Turan to see a doctor, worried about his blood-soaked state. But Turan just gives a confident smirk, brushing off the concern this isn't his blood. With the threat handled, the two ships sail on, the friendly captain shouting that they've thoroughly looted the pirate ship. Back in the captain's quarters, the eye-patch-wearing man reveals the ship's surprising origin. It was a merchant vessel stolen years ago, and now he asks Turan what he plans to do with his prize. Turan is taken completely by surprise. He's the new owner? He admits he has no idea what to do with it, but the captain already has a few options in mind. First, he could try returning it, but that means dealing with endless bureaucracy for a meager reward. The smarter move, he suggests, is to sell it at the North Sea archipelago, where they're desperate for ships. But Turan, ever the pragmatist, sees the flaw. He can't sail it alone, and the captain's crew needs to be paid. The captain laughs, impressed, while his men unceremoniously dump the pirate corpses into the sea. So Turan cuts to the chase. The captain can handle everything, from sailing to selling, for a 20% cut. With a booming laugh, the captain eagerly accepts, promising his connections will get them a fantastic price. Just as their new business venture begins, a sailor bursts in, shouting about a mermaid he's found. The captain's first thought is pure disbelief. Are they being attacked by mermaids now? But the man quickly clarifies. It wasn't an attack. The pirates had one captured. They were keeping it prisoner, locked away down in the ship's hold, and Turan's interest is immediately piqued. While this drama unfolds, the rest of the crew is still busy mopping the bloody aftermath of the battle from the decks. The captain, already smelling more money, refers to their new discovery as a precious little thing. He turns to Turan, the ship's new owner, and invites him to see the prize for himself. As they head below, Turan is already thinking business, asking if creatures like this usually sell for a high price. The captain explains that rich, bored nobles on the mainland go absolutely wild for mystical things, especially beautiful ones. He leads the way through the dark corridors of the hold, stopping right before the door to their captive cell. Turan's face is a mask of calm curiosity as they approach the cell. And there he is, a young boy with pale blue skin, bound tightly in the middle of the room. The captain scoffs, disappointed that their rare find is a male. He explains that mermen just don't sell. The rich nobles only pay top coin for beautiful mermaids. But the captive erupts with rage, declaring himself Armani, the 47th prince of North Estade. The captain murmurs to Turan that it's probably just a bluff to avoid being killed. He leans over the boy, mockingly asking Prince Triton if he can turn into a fish. Armani struggles, yelling that he can't transform while he's tied up and out of the sea. Turning back to Turan, the captain dismisses it as a desperate lie to try and escape. Turan, however, ignores him, his thoughts drifting to a much darker question. Do merfolk eat humans? Turan's eyes harden. If the captain says he's worthless, then he'll just kill him. The so-called prince flinches, but Turan is still weighing the kid's story. He can't just let him go. If it's a lie and he escapes, they'll be played for fools. As magical energy begins to gather, Armani screams for him to stop. A chilling blue aura crackles to life around Turan's bandaged hand. The merman desperately insists he's never eaten a human, not even once. But Turan's gaze remains impossibly cold, judging his every word. He hesitates for just a second, his jaw clenched in thought. Sensing the opening, Armani blurts out a new offer. His life for a treasure. A manic, desperate grin spreads across his face as he promises them riches. Not just any treasure, he claims, but a relic left by the gods humans worship. He guides them towards a strange, heart-shaped island, shimmering in the sunset. Following his directions, their ship finally pulls into a bustling port city. The weary sailors explode with joy, roaring about, finally reaching dry land. Watching them, the captain quietly asks Turan if he's reached a conclusion on the merman's tale. Turan smirks, confident that the location isn't far and he can handle it alone tonight. Later, he rows a small boat through the moonlit canals, a heavy chain connecting him to his passenger. Armani is outraged by the chains, insisting a prince like him would never break his word. But his bravado fades, and he nervously asks if he'll truly be freed if the treasure is real. Turan simply agrees, his hand glowing with chilling blue energy as a silent warning. As they row, Armani tries to manage expectations, claiming the treasure is only amazing by human standards. Turan is having none of it, telling him to just cut the chatter and lead the way. Without another word, he suddenly dives over the side of the boat, plunging into the dark waters below. He slices through the crushing depths, a man on a mission. But as he descends, something unexpected makes him pause. The merman's words echo in his mind, "Don't be disappointed." Was that a warning? Turan shakes it off, his own voice in his head telling him to just get this over with. The moonlit journey across the waves feels like a distant memory now. His eyes narrow, focusing on whatever presence he sensed in the deep. Finally, Armani points to a desolate island on the horizon, confirming that's their destination. Reaching the seabed, Turan touches the ground, ready to confirm his suspicions. He closes his eyes, focusing his mana into a pulse of pure searching energy. The spell expands through the depths, a silent question sent to the ocean. Where are the merfolk? A faint smirk crosses his lips. Good. At least Armani wasn't foolish enough to lead him into a nest. With the water confirmed to be clear, their boat finally reaches the shores of the moonlit island. They beach the small vessel and step onto the eerie, silent land. Turan marches forward, dragging the terrified Armani who frantically insists he remembers the way. Then, the small guide freezes, pointing a trembling finger into the woods, shouting that he's found it. Turan follows his gaze, his expression unreadable as he surveys the area. Before them lies a secluded, tranquil spring nestled deep within the forest. Turan casually notes, the spring is only about 300 meters deep. Armani just blinks, the sheer depth of that statement lost on him for a moment. Without warning, Turan starts tying the little merman to a nearby tree, ignoring his frantic protests. Armani finally blurts out his real fear. If Turan dies down there, he'll be left to starve. With a cold finality, Turan tells him to hope for the best then, for both their sakes. His insurance policy secured, he wades into the frigid, moonlit water. He takes one last, deep breath, steeling himself for the crushing pressure below. And with a splash, he plunges headfirst into the abyss. Down and down he sinks, leaving the world of air and light far behind. In the silent darkness, his eyes snap open, ready to uncover whatever secret lies at the bottom. Deeper and deeper he goes, his hair floating like a ghost in the crushing dark. His eyes finally adjust to the gloom, and he can just make out the lakebed below. He pushes onward through the silent, alien landscape, searching for his prize. Then, his eyes lock onto something in the distance, and his breath catches. It's not a rock formation, it's a colossal, petrified serpent coiled in the abyss. A flicker of triumph has found it, the source of the merman's terror. But that victory is short-lived, as his lungs begin to burn with an agonizing fire. His body betrays him, and he chokes on a mouthful of freezing water. Powerless, he starts to sink, his consciousness fading into the deep blue. The last thing he sees is the head of the giant stone snake looming over him. But just as darkness threatens to claim him, his eyes snap back open. He's drifting right beside a body, perfectly preserved in the crushing depths. It's a Freyan, he realizes, its form strangely untouched by time or decay. Then, a soft golden light from the corpse's waist catches his fading attention. A compass, glowing with an ethereal energy, its needle pointing right at him. Back on the shore, the little merman waits, tied to a post in agonizing suspense. Suddenly, Turan explodes from the water, gasping for precious air. The merman's eyes widen, desperately asking if he managed to find it. Catching his breath, Turan calmly meets the creature's frantic gaze. He found it, all right, and it seems he discovered something else entirely. He senses a strange blue flame ignite on the creature's chest. It's a beacon of pure energy, a life force he can now perceive. Turan looks at the compass, realizing it can sense not just life, but internal power. With the information gathered, he shatters the merman's chains with a single, effortless punch. The little creature stares at his freed hands, utterly bewildered. He didn't think Turan would let him go, expecting to be sold again, but Turan simply says he made a promise. Overcome with gratitude, the merman calls him a kind demon, promising to tell his father to spare him if war ever breaks out. Turan just scoffs, telling him to stop talking nonsense as he pulls on his shirt. Then, without any warning, he sends the creature flying back into the water with a swift kick. As he hits the waves, the merman transforms, becoming a glowing dolphin-like being and vanishing into the depths. Watching the waves, Turan realizes that strange little creature wasn't bluffing about being royalty. The next morning, their ship arrives at a new port, the air thick with the promise of trade and trouble. But the first sound to greet the day is the sharp crack of a whip, followed by a grunt of pure agony. On deck, a group of sailors are nursing their bleeding backs, groaning for medicine to soothe the stinging lashes. A grim-faced captain swings his whip, roaring at his men that they will not be late again. Turan emerges from his cabin to investigate the noise, just as the captain declares insubordination a capital offense on his ship. A crewman explains these are the idiots who stumbled back late from a tavern brawl the night before. He just watches silently, absorbing the brutal reality of life on this vessel. As the punishment continues, others apply a strange, glowing blue salve to the fresh wounds. As Turan watches, he realizes he can literally perceive the life force draining from the wounded sailors. He heads into the port town, asking for the captain, who's apparently gone to find a buyer for the ship. It seems the captain found his man, already sitting down for a deal in a quiet tavern. The potential buyer, a man with a stern look and an eye patch, listens intently. Turan strides into the tavern and directly approaches their table, ready to talk business. The captain introduces the man as Captain Samuel, who has agreed to buy the ship for 1,000 gold coins. The price isn't bad, Turan muses as he sits, but he does have one small problem with the arrangement. He smirks, explaining that carrying around that much gold is simply too inconvenient for his tastes. The captain tells him he's out of luck. For magic tools or relics, he'd need to go to a place called Komad. The captain points him toward Komad, home to the Tamer family Hausderman, suggesting he use his new funds to get a proper monster. A tamer Turan considers it. A beast that could understand speech would certainly make his journey much smoother. With the deal concluded, their ship finally sets sail across the vast, open ocean. The former pirates, now his crew, are in high spirits, feeling blessed to be serving a descendant of God's people. Their good mood is shattered when the lookout suddenly screams a warning about dark clouds gathering ahead. Almost instantly, the bright day turns to night as a furious storm descends upon them. The once calm sea erupts into a violent tempest, with massive waves threatening to swallow the ship whole. The captain bellows orders to his men, telling them to furl the sails and move the cargo below deck. Panicked, the crew scrambles to secure the chests, knowing one wrong move could send them all to a watery grave. But their efforts are useless as a monstrous wave crashes down, tossing the ship like a child's toy. The deck tilts violently, sending men sliding across the wet planks, their desperate cries lost in the wind. One unlucky soul loses his grip entirely, flung screaming into the churning, ice-cold abyss. He hits the water, his mind blank with shock, only to realize a strange blue light is enveloping him. On deck, Turan stands unfazed, a single hand raised as he effortlessly levitates his overboard crew back to safety. He gently deposits the terrified men back onto the deck, their bodies still glowing with the remnants of his magic. One of the pirates looks up in awe, but Turan's sharp command cuts through the storm, ordering him to get down. With his men secured, he begins weaving a new spell, intricate threads of mana swirling around his bandaged fingers. A thick, spiraling rope of pure energy shoots out, anchoring the ship's mast against the storm's fury. Not content with just saving the mast, his mana extends to lock down every loose crate and barrel on deck. As monstrous waves threaten to swallow the vessel whole, he bellows the order for everyone to retreat below. Huddled in the swinging lamplight of the hold, the crew and the young merman Armani try to find warmth. He calmly takes a drink while the men he just saved fall to their knees, stammering their heartfelt thanks. With a slight, confident smirk, he simply asks if anyone is hurt, dismissing their gratitude as unnecessary. Even the hardened Captain Samuel approaches, admitting they would have sunk without his intervention and voicing the fear on everyone's mind. Turan glances back at the shivering crew, stating they have no choice but to trust the ship and the helmsman now. But his gaze lingers on the others, especially the small form of Armani, trembling under a thick blanket. A quiet determination settles on his face. The storm might not be the only threat they have to worry about. Seeing their shivering forms, Turan calls for everyone to gather around him in a circle. The ship's captain immediately objects, warning him of the danger of starting a fire on a wooden vessel. But with a casual snap of his fingers, Turan dismisses his concerns. A gentle, controlled flame blooms to life in the palm of his hand, radiating pure warmth. He sends the ribbon of fire weaving through the hold, a harmless and beautiful spectacle. The magic is so precise, so incredibly sophisticated, that the captain can't believe what he's seeing. A wave of soothing heat washes over the crew, chasing away the biting cold. And in that moment, the captain has a profound realization, finally understanding the old legends. Humans are to serve the wizard, and the wizard is to reign over and care for them all.